Good evening, everyone. My name is Tom Naker, and I'm a consultant for Hartelco out of Hardington. With me is Greg Mueller with Ershman Engineering, and Eric Tyler with Ershman Engineering. We're here this evening. We've been visiting with some of the counties in the area in Nebraska and South Dakota and discussing 5G and broadband with some of the counties. What we're looking to do is we're trying to find some conformity in the 5G business to where we would go in, and again, this is just for information tonight. I just want to make sure that you folks are aware of the different things that are out there, because I know you're going to be getting hit with a lot of 5G stuff in the next few years. So what we're looking at doing is going into the counties, getting towers permitted, probably towers that are going to be around 60 to 80 feet. We do not know how they'll be spaced yet, but what we would do is space those towers according to what they call propagation maps, and that's where the 5G, they figure the 5G is going to be, the spacing would be for those 5G towers. As I mentioned, it would be about 60 to 80 feet. We would probably try to go in and lease the property. We need about all we need is about 100 by 100 area to put these towers on. They're self-supporting towers. So what we're trying to do, rather than have everybody going out there putting up towers, we're looking at where we would go into the counties and place these towers so that 2 or 3 carriers could be on them at once. In other words, there could be a Verizon, there could be an AT&T, a Sprint, whoever, along with some broadband. As you probably have heard in the cities, those 5G spacings are probably going to be around 800 feet. So there'll be all kinds of small little antennas at different places in the cities. But as we get into the rural areas, we're just trying to figure a way where we can, set it up so that we don't have so many towers and people hanging things on grain bins and everything else trying to get signal to people. So that's our intent. We've been, like I said, we've been working with some counties in Nebraska. Hartelco is also involved with a company called Nebraska Link, which has fiber optics throughout the state of Nebraska. So we'll also probably be looking at trying to put some of these towers along the interstates in Nebraska, so that what we'll do with that. What Hartelco's interest is, we're in the fiber business, so we'll take the fiber and bring that signal back off of those towers for the 5G. So, and Ershman's, of course, will be building the towers. And Eric has some pictures of a few of those towers with him. I'd just like to have him show you those and maybe explain to you a little bit what they look like.
Thank you.
I'll let you explain what a little bit.
My name is Greg Mueller. I work with Ershman. You guys might recognize those towers. All 4 of those are in Yankton. We built all 4 of them, different options. When it comes to the 5G, that first picture there, that monopole is by the old Slumberland. That's probably about as high as they're going to need to be. That one's, I think it's a 120-footer. The last one is a guide tower down by the stockyards. I don't envision seeing that, but we'll see where the technology takes us. The self-supporting tower on the second one there is behind St. Ben's. So the first, the monopole and the self-supporter are probably your 2 most common types, and both of those 2 we're looking at there are probably on the higher end of what will be needed, depending on, like I said, what the technology is going to dictate we need. Eric, you want to talk a little bit about it?
Explain 5G to him, Eric.
Explain 5G. 5G is what we're considering the next generation or the next technology in cell phone technology that's out there. Currently, we're in the 4G or 4 LTE, long-term evolution. We're in the process of stepping up to the 5th generation, and as each generation has come out, we've get more and better improvements. How many of you had bag phones? How far did they travel? You got a long ways from your tower that you can be able to get that. Remember when we had the analog phones, the flip phones? Then we went to digital, and that was a big change because then you could hear more. We started to get more information onto our phone. We went to the 3rd generation. Our generations are moving a little bit more faster. How many people get email on their phone? How many surf the web on their phone? How many buy stuff using mobile, buying stuff on Amazon or things through your phone? That part is growing dramatically, and also with the carriers and also with broadband, all of that is becoming more and more. They're currently are estimating that we're going to use 7 times more data in the next 7 to 10 years than we currently do right now. They are now, as T-Mobile has put it, into exabytes of data being used monthly. So the amount of data that's being used is a huge amount. The new technology in 5th generation will allow us to be able to speed up our access to our phones, because everybody wants their data, they want the speed, they want information now. We're starting to get with cable, they're starting to get into 1 gig to certain people's home and to businesses. The internet is becoming more and more interesting and being a bigger area for everybody. The carriers, AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile have also said that they want to be your internet service provider. They want to be able to access and be able to use and supply you with your TV. They're called cord cutters, as the newest term is being called. We have other options besides the cable company or regular CBS or NBC to get different programming. Netflix is now as part of a standard on T-Mobile as one of their things to help you get onto their phone system. T-Mobile is in Yankton, they're not turned on yet, but they are expanding quite heavily. When we talk about technology and we talk about airwaves and how well your phone works in certain areas, just depends on the frequencies that they're using. The lower the frequency, like 600 or 700, 700 is a major band that's being used, has a better way of penetrating and propagating better in a bigger area to cover better. The higher the frequency you go, the less coverage that it has, but the better data transmission it has. So that's where you're going to see in bigger cities, in other cities where certain areas where there's larger populations, there's going to be what we'll call a small cell or another access point for your phone to use. A big thing that's going to happen in your cell phone is right now your phone talks to 1 tower. In the 5th generation, you're going to be talking to multiple access points at the same time in order to get your speed higher up. Because they say in the next 4 years, according to T-Mobile, you should average about 245 megs per second on your phone. Most of us around 12. So they're going to be competing to gather your attention and be able to offer you internet at your home, because that's what all they're going to do is fixed wireless is coming from the carriers, but also through other broadband and that. So there is a big push also at the FCC to push out rural broadband. And they just released another $600 million for some more projects all across the United States. So rural broadband is a big push. President Trump has also pledged with FCC $20 billion for rural broadband to increase that coverage out there. So some of this is going to be what we considered 5G. It'll also be considered other through fixed wireless, which is going to be very similar. Technologies are going to be basically the same. The higher the frequency we go, the more data we have, but the shorter distance we can go. How many people have you noticed the tower over by between the hospital, kind of going, just when you get around the corner, there's a little tower there. Part of the reason why Verizon went with SDN to put that tower there was because they needed another access point to be able to handle all of that data and that voice and that capacity in that area, because there's times when that capacity blows up the other tower that's closer by that doesn't allow us to get our signal or our phone calls like we want to. The same way they did down by the campground. There's 3 of them that they proposed down there that came through the county commission to get those approved. That's the same reason, is to be able to allow us to make sure to add capacity, because each tower can only have so much capacity. So we have to get the towers somewhat closer together, shorten them to be able to hand off so we see everything seamless. Fiber with like Hartel, fiber is a major thing that they need to have because of the capacity that we need and the amount of data that we're using. So what we're trying to do and been talking about is how can we work with the county and also inform you guys on how can we make things better for the county, because one thing that comes up is telecommuting. How can we get people to live in areas that they really truly love but able to work using the internet somewhere else? And that's where a lot of this technology will come in with fixed wireless, broadband, 5G will allow that to happen, and also be able to offer other services that we haven't even thought of yet that's coming down the road. It's going to take some time for all this to get built out, but it's also good to start thinking about it now and how can we benefit our county by using the technology that's coming. So the FCC is doing more and more to put out more frequencies for the carriers and other companies to be using to offer more services. And they're also looking very much at the rural area, just like when our parts of our county are is a little bit rural, trying to include as many people as we possibly can.
Let's see if they have some questions.
I was going to ask, do you guys have any questions?
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
may I have the floor a second?
Sure.
We're actually at a point where we're looking at redoing Article 25, our citing of wireless telecommunications. And I invite you to be part of helping us rewrite that if you'd like. It's a pretty interesting and intricate chapter of our zoning ordinance. Are you guys familiar with Article 25?
Yeah, actually, I was here at your meeting, probably 2-3 weeks ago, weren't you, discussing towers with one of the broadband companies? Yeah, and yeah, we'd be happy to help work with you on that. Definitely.
Appreciate it very much. And one more question is Yankton is, we're pretty diversified. We have, the large city of Yankton, but we also have a lot of small towns. We have the lake area and then our rural area. Internet is so important for everybody, especially our rural communities and small towns. How are we able to get high-speed service to those small communities and to our rural residents?
Part of that becomes from the Universal Service Fund and some of the different programs that the FCC has, but with also this $20 billion that's going more to the rural areas. There are programs out there. There's CAF 2 that just came out, and there's CAF 1 that Mid-Continent was one that participated in that, and they got $29 million from the federal government to expand rural broadband into Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota. Now, the term broadband is really changing because it used to be programs that are out there and they're fading some of those out and going into the new ones where they required 23 megabytes download and 3 up. Then they went to 50. Now the new program is at 100. So they are trying to increase capacity and also increase better service because that's becoming a bigger thing. So some of the federal government funding that is out there and programs that they do have certain requirements for those. And I know there's other companies in the area that are accessing those funds to be able to bring out more of that technology to the rural areas and that. But the government does have recently, within the last month or so, with President Trump and the FCC Chairman Pai, put out $20.4 billion to do that. So there are government programs out there. That's something to talk to our senators and Congress people about, and being able to mention to that we'd like to find ways to help share in that pie and be able to offer these services or help the companies in our county offer those services to our county people, again, to be able to take advantage of that federal money that is starting to be coming out there. It's going to take a little time for it to get all pushed out, but that's something to definitely try to let them know that we're definitely interested in participating as much as we can.
One of the things with this, addressing your comment, Dan, obviously Hartel and Ershman are local businesses and they would be interested in the 5G sector. And if they're going to be participants in writing their zoning ordinance, I think it would be best interest for the county to go out and ask for like a request for a proposal that allow other people the opportunity to have that input into that. They may not, they may say, hey, we're not going to participate, then all great, I'll tell Ershman. But I think if you didn't do that, then as it comes in, we're going to be one of the most qualified competitors and they're local. Then you would have perception issues. And I think even just that when we go to write this zoning ordinance aspect, do we ask for other inputs? Even if no one participates, it's like, so what? We offered, we asked, no one participated. But if we don't ask that and then these guys bid, then it becomes, we set it up so that they got the bid. So I think that's something with the commissioners that I bring up that I think we need to
That's a good point. Thank you.
publicly address that.
Where are you at in your planning phases? What would be your estimated number of towers you want to start with and time frame?
As I mentioned, what we're waiting on right now is for the 5G people to decide what these spacings will be. They do that with what's called propagation maps. So we don't know at this point if that's going to be 3 miles, 4 miles, what the spacing is going to be on that. So as soon as we have that information, then we'll start planning where those towers are going to go and where we can set them. And again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to build a suit for the counties, for the providers, the Verizons, whoever it may be, so that, as I said, we just don't have antennas all over the place. You know, we've got some conformity in throughout the counties and along the interstates wherever we're going to be. So all we're trying to do is just inform you guys of what we're doing. That doesn't mean we're going to be here by any means. You may have other plans down the road, but we wanted to make you aware of what we're doing so that as time goes and you start hearing new information on it, you can decide which way that you want to take a look at this.
We're probably a few years out.
Oh, yeah,
right?
absolutely.
I mean, 3 to 4 years at least, I
Yeah,
would say, so.
I would say so.
Just so.
But you know,
doesn't think we're gonna start this project.
You'd be
with summer.
surprised how many counties and cities, though, are getting hit by every carrier around with ideas of how they're gonna, how they want to plant different towers around. And like I said, if you allow everybody to come in and just start plopping towers wherever they want to, you're gonna have kind of a mess out there. So we're just trying to come up with an idea where we can kind of work with everybody, not only the broadband, but the cellular folks, so.
You intend to work with private property owners for most of the towers, or trying to look at right-of-ways?
Of course, we'll have to look and see what your right-of-ways and stuff are in the county, but yeah, we would like to probably try to lease or buy the property to set the towers on. And more than likely, you're going to be most of them will probably be setting right in intersections, so.
Right.
And in our case, where we have fiber, we're going to try to get those towers where we've got the fiber so that because we got to get that fiber to those towers, so. It's going to be a little different plan in Nebraska than what we've got here. Any other questions?
So would this be grant money that the county would apply for once a plan has been developed or proposed or?
No, this would be, we're not asking anybody for any kind of grant money or anything. We would provide, we would do the funding ourselves. We'll come in and put the towers up. We would lease space on those towers to the different carriers. So we'll install the towers.
So you would be applying for the grant from the government for the $1.4 billion?
We do at times.
Oh, I see.
Right now, we haven't even looked at that.
These essentially be spec towers,
Yeah.
like a spec building, but you
I see.
build towers and hope to lease out.
Well,
to-
yeah, but it'd be kind of like, say, built to suit, because, I mean, we've got to know exactly where they're going to be.
Right.
We can't just plop them out in the middle of nowhere and hope that somebody's going to jump on the thing. It's got to be right in the right spot, and work with all the different carriers, as well as broadband. Broadband's going to be a little different situation. They may be just on a few of our towers because their spacings are going to be different too, so. But you'll be hearing a lot about it in the next few years, and any information we can give you, if you'd like us to come back in and visit with you about any of it, we'd be happy to do that. If we can help you with any of your design and so with your ordinances and stuff, we certainly do that too.
It kind of puts us in I feel like it kind of puts us in a tough spot. I mean, and not what you're presenting or anyone, but I mean, at some point next year, what if someone may come forward and want to put up a tower? We're sitting here going, well, we don't know if we should put up a tower because maybe we're going to put up 20 towers in the county. I mean, do we put this plan, it's like we have to have this plan and we have to put it in place and say, these are the towers.
I would hope in the next year or so, we've got a pretty good idea where the towers are going to be. And of course, you're going to have people coming in all the time wanting to put towers up like the broadband folks. And I think you just have to work with those folks. I mean, they're down the road, they may want to jump on one of our towers, but at the time, they're just trying to get broadband out to the rural areas, which they need right now.
Truly, but you're not suggesting or hoping that nothing happens until you got your plan together and then we
No,
just
we
have
just-
your plan and
we-
nothing else.
We'll
That's
make
not-
ours work one way or
Well,
another.
I'm just trying to figure out
Understand.
how we deal with the next person who comes forward
Yeah.
and wants a tower and how we, try to get that in with your plan,
Yeah, and yeah, I know exactly what you're saying, but I mean, if you have broadband folks come in, they can certainly talk to us to kind of see if we got an idea of where we're going to be, and we'll certainly work with them, but until we know exactly how these spacings are going to be, we won't be doing anything. Is there anything else?
One last thing regarding where the towers are going to go. We've been, years ago, back in I think probably early 2000s, we did put up about 20 spec towers. And that day and age is gone because we've had Verizon come in less than a half a mile from one of our towers and put up their own versus leasing space. It's the industry is cyclical where they've got money they need to spend, and the next time you go, they'll sell their towers and lease space on the next guys. So we would not be looking at doing spec towers. That does not work. We've still got 3 of them down on Highway 20 in Nebraska that are sitting empty for the last 12 years. What we have done when we did that back in the day, we did strike a deal, had some terms with the city regarding putting up the tower down by Stockman's, where we worked out a deal with them. They gave us the land to put that tower up, and the city got some of the revenue. So that option is on the table as well, possibly, if somebody could work out a deal. Obviously, we don't want to put ourselves in a spot where we're helping write the ordinance, and I don't want that. No, I don't think any of us want that. That's not where we want to go with this. The county has, in the past, been, with the ordinance, has been difficult to get towers up. I think everybody's aware of that. But they're coming. And all we're trying to do is put these towers in the places when the Verizon or the Sprint or T-Mobile, when they come to town with these propagation maps and say, we need a tower in this bubble, in this bubble, in this bubble, in this bubble. If we get with the right people for them, they would say, okay, go out and find the ground and do the build to suit. And if that works, that's good for everybody because we'd build the 2 to 3 carrier towers or 4 carrier, whatever it takes in that area, how many people are coming to town, to eliminate more structures. Like we have all said, they're coming no matter what. It's a matter of how we deal with it up front here to hopefully limit the number of towers and still get the coverage we're going for. So.
Any other questions for him?
All right, thank you guys very much. We appreciate it. Like I said, if we can get some information to you in the future, please let us know, okay?
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, do
Yes.
you want me to turn the ceiling fans on so they're getting warm? Anybody else? I'm gonna go turn it.
I will say on towers, we probably have 4 coming soon. One's about to hit as conditional use, but with that convoluted ordinance, it all goes off-site to a consultant who works through all of them, and once he gets everything he needs, which the cellular companies pay for, then they're kicked here. I have one that's finally ready for conditional use, so you'll be having that. So I have a couple new ones, I believe, and I kind of get lost in that whole process, and a few where they're doing a bunch of modifications and adding and upgrading antennas. So like you said down here, there's probably, I think, at least 3 and possibly 4 that are going to be coming in the next couple of months. We're going to see some new towers or upgrades to towers. North and over by Gayville, that one's going to be seeing some work done to it. So they are upgrading in the county and moving and adding towers. And one on 81 was the last one that went through the whole process, I believe, and that was before my time when that was approved. But I see it's under construction now.
Well, infrastructure wears out, it needs to be updated, it gets out of date, and it's just the way the world is. I don't think that that's anything bad.
I think it's gonna be important to try to plan as much as we can to place these where they make sense. But at the same time, to your
that's-
effect, you can't be
It's
exclusive
just as,
either, so.
you know, we
But
could
I think
pinpoint
it's-
where we think they should be with the help of whoever, whether it's them or anyone else, we can
Or
pinpoint, but.
Verizon or whoever.
But if a company comes in and is able to do a deal with the landowner somewhere else, and, I mean, I don't know, you know, are we gonna say, no, you have to put it on these towers, we've already pinpointed these areas, or are we gonna say, you can put them wherever you want? You know, I mean, it's not something, it's just something we have to start thinking about,
Right.
how we're gonna handle that.
Well, I think their hopes is probably that they can put it in a place where it
Where it
makes
makes
sense,
both
makes
sense
sense for
financially,
the
and-
big
yeah,
guys to just use
right.
rather than put.
Because
one up.
rather than, because we can't, they can't rely on us to say, no, you can't put one up, and then they have to go do business with
Right.
this guy. I mean, that's, you know, so we have to be careful we're not
Yeah, makes sense.
doing that.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Brian, did you want to address anything? We've got 4 minutes. Is there anything you can address on the administrative thing in 4 minutes? Or we could,
Right, we just
the
wait for the
minutes, I
meeting
guess.
to start.
We could approve the minutes. I
Let's
guess.
wait for the meeting, I think would be best, Madam Chair.
Yeah,
Let's wait till
okay,
start.
that's true. It's not 7 yet, so. Sorry. He's right, it's not quite 7, so technically the meeting has not begun.
We could turn these fans on too high. Did I turn them down?
Sure.
I think I turned them up too high.
Roll call whenever you're ready.
Pring,
Here.
Hanson,
Here.
Harper. Here. Healy,
Here.
Clemish.
Here.
Schultz,
Here.
Williams. Here. Welch,
Yep.
Michaels.
Okay, we have a quorum. The first item on the agenda is, are there any items we want to add to said agenda? Okay, hearing none. Could we approve the agenda, please? Do a voice vote? Do we need a roll call vote for that? I think we do.
I'd like to add
Oh,
something
you
for
wanna
this
add something?
emotion.
Okay, so-
I think we should add something where, and I don't see it on here, where we schedule a work session, like a
Yes.
routine work session.
Can you turn the mics up a little bit, please?
Can you hear me now? Is that better? It's too far away, apologize. Maybe a work session, we've
accessory
discussed
structures?
what accessory structures or just, I don't know what you want to call it, zoning ordinance.
Yeah,
If we want to keep it generic, just zoning work sessions or something like that. I think we need to schedule a set time each month where we work on that, so.
I think that's a
I'd
good
like to
idea.
add that. So I guess I'd make a motion that we add that
Okay.
to the agenda as a discussion, as something to consider.
And do
Yeah.
that before the administrative?
It doesn't matter, wherever
Yeah,
you want to
probably
put it.
would do that at the end of the meeting because everything else is on a schedule.
Right before the Brian's topics? or-
Sure. Anything else anyone wants to add? Actually, I put that to be put on the agenda at 6 o'clock, but then the meeting came up
Sure.
with our telco and Urshman, so that was superseded it, so.
So,
All right. Anything else? Someone want to make a motion to approve the agenda with the added discussion on the work session?
So moved.
I can't hear your mic very well. Get it closer, please.
Can you hear me now? Super.
Talk that way.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion to approve the minutes, not the minutes, excuse me, the agenda. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Got that, Brian? All right. All those in favor? Aye.
I,
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion is carried. And now would be the time for any conflict of interest declarations to be made on any of the items on today's agenda. Okay, hearing none, we can proceed to the meeting. Next item would be to approve, what?
All right, go ahead.
Next item would be to approve the minutes. Do we have any additions or corrections to said minutes?
Yeah, I like my last name spelled with a C in between S and H, and that's throughout the document.
Oh, oops.
No, it's fine. So I would make those corrections. It's multiple times just throughout the document. It's Klimisch.
Okay.
And
All right.
And the motion to adjourn, was there, do we remember?
I think I'm the one who did that, but I don't recall. So I guess I would take credit for that.
It was a lot of extra discussion at the end.
Yeah,
so-
yeah.
Okay. Any other additions or corrections to the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the May 14th minutes as amended.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carried. Do we have the April minutes?
They're on my desk, I haven't typed them up yet.
Okay.
So I'll try to get those done before I'm done.
All right. Okay. Time being 7:05, the replat of Lot D for the quarry is the next item on the agenda.
Basically, we have a replat of the area around the old Quarry Restaurant. You'll see two shaded areas. What's going on here is a land swap between the two. Denny Breck is here to represent the plat and provide any answers to more detailed questions, but as I said, it's a plats to equal out the land shares in that area. But Denny's here.
I'm Dennis Breck, representing the people involved in this. We ended up with an issue because there's a driveway on the Foss property used by the Falkenberg property, by Falkenbergs. They had made an agreement that to leave it that way because Steve was cutting their grass, and so we got ready to sell the place and found that we needed to do this. So it's an equal swap of property. The easements stay, there's access easements on both of them. They stay there. The reason for the equal swap was to make sure that Foss's had 2 acres back there because they have a storage unit and they have their home. So if they decide to sell either one of them, they still have an acre to do that. So that's why the equal swap. The easement that comes off of the west side of the property is part of the driveway to the twin home that Steve Falkenberg owns. And then the other property, there's still an easement to be able to get at Foss's storage unit as well as the other people that own the other twin home out there. So we left everything the same, other than we just had to swap the land. Anybody have
We don't
any?
have any utilities running through the land that's being swapped, do we? I mean, like water, sewer, anything like that?
The sewer's down below and it's a shared sewer system. It's a septic system. I believe the water comes in below.
Duplex, so that would all.
You're right. And the easements are in place for all of that stuff. I don't know if there'd be any power involved in that. The power sits in the middle of the lot towards the south, so I don't think there's any power lines under that. And water comes in that direction too, so.
Yeah, that was the only thing I could think of
Yeah.
that might be an issue. You know,
Okay.
If someone else's utilities were running through or under the.
No, it shouldn't in any way.
Does the board have any questions for him before I open it up to public comment?
No.
Or was there anything else you wanted to add?
I think that is all I can tell you, yeah.
Sure.
Okay?
Tit for tat.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak about this issue? Okay, hearing none. The time for public input is now closed. So do we have a motion on this from the board or any more discussion from the board on this issue? Apparently utilities are not an issue. He has easements for the driveway. It's an equal amount of property being swapped out, looking down the road so that if Mr. Foss decides to divide his 2-acre lot into 2 1-acre lots, he has the capability to do so. So, seems to be a logical course of events, in my opinion. Anything else we want to ask Mr. Breck that I haven't thought of yet?
Make a motion for approval.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, roll call vote whenever you are ready.
Welch,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Klimish,
Yes.
Healy,
Yes.
Harper,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Frame,
Yes.
unanimous. And
We're missing it.
Michaels.
Mike?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, forgot this guy.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I only have 8 hash marks here.
known him longer than everybody else, sorry. Michaels.
All right,
Not on the list.
sorry. All right, next item on the agenda is Southeast Ag, a 5 plus or minus acre parcel lying 350 feet north of 301st Street along 444th Avenue, all within the west half of the southwest quarter of Section 23, Tract 95 North, Range 55 West in Wallachtown Township. It has a variance on lot size.
The applicant is requesting a smaller lot size in order to do what I believe would be a commercial venture. That lot description is something I made up because they've decided not to plat it until they know they could secure the variance. So I did measurements on Beacon to try to narrow it down. It's basically an old farmstead site. So you can see on the aerial that they're taking in all the trees and such and some more ground on top of that to be 5 acres, I believe, plus or minus. The applicant and the landowner and both owners of the business are here tonight, I believe, to answer any questions beyond that. Yep. You're a lot smarter than I am on this. You're smarter than I am on this.
My name's Dallas Hanson. I've been working with Dean Mormon for like 10 years, and this seed business is on his residence. And you know, it's growing a lot of truck traffic, and Dean's gonna start slowing down and is talking about retirement in the next couple years, so we need to move this facility off of there, and he owns this piece of land over on the Walshtown Road, and so he's allowed us to buy that 5 acres to plus or minus to move the facility. And you know, he doesn't wish to sell 20 acres because he's farming the rest of it, you know, nor do we really wish to buy more than 5 acres, obviously, for many reasons, you know, cost being one of them, of course, but and I guess, you know, the acreage that's there, you know, we'll clean it up, some of the trees, and there's a couple old buildings and stuff, and there is another building there that we will probably use, but you know, we need to get it off the gravel road down there. We've had some issues with the light bridge that's just east of the facility. So as far as rerouting trucks and things like that, you know, and then for a spell this spring, you know, probably month and a half, we had to turn trucks down, and you know, so then you just get a lot of backlog of all of a sudden the roads open up and 30 trucks got to show up, you know, so. And, you know, I think the one neighbor that lives right across from Dean, we've had some issues there. You know, he gets tired of the truck traffic and things like that, so. So I guess that's kind of our reasons for what we want to do there.
So what is the sidewall height of your proposed building going to be?
I think our plan right now is 18 feet. We stack, there's plastic boxes that the seed comes in, and to stack them 3 high to utilize the space best, we're gonna need about 18 foot of sidewall to do that.
So you're gonna tear out some of those old trees up there? I just come by docks on the way into town there. You're gonna clean up the trees, you can leave some for a windbreak?
We'd really like to leave some. Obviously, that was one of the reasons to that place appealed to us, is there is some trees to the north and kind of to the west, so.
That's a great location.
Yeah, you know, we were on the agenda several months ago, and it turned out that spot was covered in water. So we've now, through this spring, been able to see kind of, you know, places that water isn't going to be an issue, and so yeah, we're not going to be able to leave all them trees there, but we're hoping, obviously, as many as we can. Yeah.
I think it's a great location.
Yep.
So you're not concerned, are you gonna build up to worry about water in that? It's kind of a low area, isn't it?
Water,
What do you think? Yeah.
Water will run into the ditch to the west before it'll flood. It's never flooded that yard.
That yard, okay.
We farmed it since 1965.
I'm not concerned, I was just curious.
Yeah, no,
That's his problem, he doesn't want his seed to
It
get
will
wet
get
any more
close.
than.
It will get close.
Yeah.
And we've talked to Mike about maybe putting in a driveway to 303? 301. And he just said that, you know, he was gonna bring it up at one of the meetings, and, you know, a couple hundred feet back from the intersection is where the asphalt starts and ends, and he would like us to stay on there, so as trucks get out, but there is a driveway right onto Walshtown now, but just for the flowability of traffic. If we don't need to get out onto Walshtown, our loads that go to the south and to the east, you know, then we can get onto 301 and go that way, so.
How many trucks do you expect per year for a business like this? What's your estimate?
You know, it's probably gonna be between 100 and 200. You know, we're fortunate on the bean side. I don't know if the drawings are in there, but we're hoping to put we have 4 bulk tanks as it is right now on Dean's farm, And we're hoping to put up maybe 2 more to utilize, the bulk seed rather than those totes, because bulk seed, if it doesn't get used, it doesn't have to get sent back. There's no empty tote that has to be sent back, so I guess that's why we're hoping to add a couple tanks, but
I'm just concerned, with extra truck traffic and then the load limits that come on in the spring, like we had this, that could significantly affect your business.
And there's not gonna be any extra truck traffic, because, it's the exact same business on Dean's Farm, just so the truck traffic down them roads is gonna be the same. I think it's gonna be a better deal because they're not going on a gravel road.
Yeah, they were always on that on Walsh Counter on
Yeah.
Mission Hill Road.
And Dean's been pretty good about, he's on the township board, and he just shuts them trucks off, and he's got probably one of the best gravel roads in the county because of it. But that's a lot to manage, like I said, had things not changed, we had a lot of seed that needed to be in that facility, and it wasn't. And I understand, I'd love it to be on a state highway, but I just, we've talked about this for hours, and you have to stay centrally located in your territory, and amazingly enough, this is within a mile or 2 of being centrally located. Our customers are used to coming there. So there's another Pioneer facility right up the road. If we went on 46, you'd have 2 facilities, and 81 is hills and valleys, and to me, that's a safety issue. So I'd love it if Walshtown was a 80,000 pound road year round. That'd be great, and I'd love to be on a state, one of the main highways, but I just don't see how it's possible.
Are you aware of the corridor plan that's being worked on? Nothing's done yet. The last meeting, Don Kettering proposed putting a task force together to look at road corridors. So I just...
And that's a big thing to us, I guess. I don't know if you and I have talked before about it, but if I hope the Walshtown Road's going to stay a paved road. If not, we would probably try to look elsewhere, I guess, onto another road that's going to stay, because we really need this to stay on an oil road.
Right.
Or to be on an oil road, I should say.
I would suspect Walshtown will be a corridor. If not, that's one of the main routes in this town, middle,
It's a very
it's
heavily
probably one of the
traveled
safer, no bridge roads.
I agree. The talk in the past has been 448.
Yeah.
We got more bridges, we got a lot more hills. We travel that too, we're a mile into one. It's a little further to Walshtown decisively has more traffic.
Absolutely.
I mean, day in and day out. I don't know if you guys have ever run counters.
Well, the good part about, no matter what that plan ends up to be, 448, 444, you got 301, just had a bunch of money spent on it.
Yeah.
With triple chip seal and everything else that was done on that. Whether that holds up or not remains to be seen, but you're on both. You connect,
Yep.
disconnects.
Yeah, and we've looked at that in other locations. You look at them intersections or areas where you can get out and you can go all directions, and you can kind of do that here.
I'm actually, I don't know if everybody realizes, but I'm probably the closest neighbor to this, to the west. I'm due west of this. Just so everybody knows, I did see Dean on the street one day. We talked, he mentioned it was gonna, at some point, this may or may not happen, but that's the extent of our conversation. But, just for full disclosure, but, and I can't see any issue with it. I mean, it's going to actually, as far as the neighborhood is concerned, it's going to improve the look of the neighborhood, but not to pick on Dean's old house, but I didn't say I didn't like it.
Yeah, I would agree. There's another facility just like it, up on 46, and we're going to have a similar layout, and there's another situation, 2 or 3 years ago that, you know, I'm sure they had to come in for a variance when they bought that from Wally Bakke, and to me, it looks nice, and it's a good business,
Is
so,
that as tall? Is that, it is?
yes. Yep.
Doesn't seem like it, yeah, it is an attractive building.
Okay, any more questions?
Yeah, I guess just more for the board and some discussion. I guess I don't have questions for you guys.
Okay.
We get public comment. Yeah, I can bring this up later if you want to do public comment.
Okay, all right. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this issue?
How would you zone that? Would it be commercial?
Yeah, come up.
Do you need to come up to the mic, sir?
Live by the sword, die by the sword. You gotta speak into the microphone so we can hear you.
First question, did anyone not hear me? The Kevin Huber, would that be zoned commercial then?
No, we wouldn't rezone the property. Selling agribusiness is allowed in an ag area.
Conditional use. It'd be a
Conditional
Conditional use, yeah.
So that would, but I mean,
He doesn't have to rezone it, he can just get a conditional use in
Get a conditional
agriculture
use
to have a.
You're asking.
so could you put a house there?
Sale and all that.
If the taxes would be.
Could you put a house there?
If we approve this today, yes, there's no conditional use on this. This is simply a variance for lot size,
Yep.
to answer your question.
Okay.
So he hasn't asked for the conditional use yet.
That would be another meeting.
That's another meeting.
Taxation is not equal use. It would be an ag zone, but probably taxed as commercial. So two different animals. So if you wanted to put a house there, then they'd have to come in and get a variance. Conditional use, no.
No, he can make it fit with the
They have to get a
setbacks.
variance on lot size. No, actually, they
It's
wouldn't.
an existing
With the
farmstead.
Taxes, all
It's
he'd
an
have to do.
existing farmstead.
Yeah, so he could put a house on there if he wanted.
You could put a farmstead on it, or excuse me, a house on an existing farmstead, no question.
We actually could do that now.
Yeah, right now.
Right now.
He wouldn't even have to
He
come to
wouldn't even
this
have to
board,
come
he
here.
could just go to
Could do
the.
that right now.
But now that they're asking for this lot size
Right.
and a business, could it be zoned commercial?
We're not rezoning it.
We'd have to rezone it.
Uh-uh.
Well,
That would have to be an act.
He could
Yeah,
ask,
but there would,
I don't-
but there
I
wouldn't
don't-
be a point to it. All he has to do is get a conditional use
I wouldn't really see why you would do
permit.
it, because you can do what he wants to do without rezoning it, so I wouldn't understand why he would come and ask to have it rezoned to commercial, because he can do it.
no, I understand why he isn't asking,
It's not required, to Kevin, is what.
but as long as you guys give it to him.
I believe when Mr. Nedved did that one when we were on the board, that stayed ag too on Highway 50 there, and we didn't rezone that, that stayed ag. It's a similar circumstance to this as well, and he did a variance with it.
I would think the only reason he would rezone something to commercial is if he had something that he wanted to put on there that was not allowed as a conditional use in agriculture, would be the only reason.
I guess what I was looking at is, let's say they decide to close the business down and sold it, and the house could be put there. That's all, I mean, I'm all in favor of them putting their business there. I just
Sure.
was wondering if,
Well, there's a house there now.
yeah.
Yeah. So there wouldn't be a difference.
Okay.
A beautiful. Private
Right.
road.
Would anyone else like to speak on this issue?
My name's David Healy. We have some property down the road from the facility. My question would be, setbacks, will they remain the same or will they change with the variance on this property?
The setbacks
Setbacks
themselves will
are the
remain the same.
setbacks.
They'll remain the same.
Yeah.
He could certainly ask for a variance if he needed one, but that would be
But he's got
another
5
action.
acres there.
So a quarter mile, let's say, for any kind of a feeding facility would be
You're
in
talking
order?
feedlot setback.
If a feedlot, yeah, yeah.
It's the same, there's a residence there now, so there isn't a change.
Well, yeah, there's kind of a residence there now.
Well,
yeah.
I'm just saying that's a farmstead that
It-
could be recycled as a residence,
So it'll always be referred to as residential type property. if it becomes commercial, does that change the setbacks?
No,
Okay, that's just.
no, that's fine. This is why we have a public forum, so you can come and ask questions.
Okay, real good, thank you.
Perfectly fine. Would anybody else like to speak on this issue? Okay. Hearing none, time for public input is now closed. And you wanted to say something, Joe? We have some more discussion on the board yet?
Yeah, I guess just for discussion, you know, I don't know that anybody has an issue with it at all, but we've not addressed the variance. I think we need to address the variance as a board.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think Mr. Huber was alluding to you know, why the variance and what can this property do down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Something that I'd like to add along that line, Joe, is a motion goes forward for this, and part of our ordinance is to sustain agriculture land. If the motion goes forward, we should identify that it is a current farmstead, right? What if the business goes away and then someone says, hey, it's 5 acres and I can put a house on there, it's a great location and all that? Because right now, we're counting it as a farmstead, but if it turns into this business property and they remove the house, does it still remain, is it still considered a farmstead? Or once the house goes away, we go to commercial structure, is it no longer a farmstead? So I guess my question is, do we define it as a farmstead as we go forward, because it currently is? And that's something that I think we just need to identify. If a motion goes forward, is it going to be identified as a farmstead as it goes forward, as it is right now, or does it at some point become that it's no longer?
Well,
a
he's
farmstead?
using the part of the ordinance of it being a farmstead in order to reduce the lot size.
Right, I
Within our
understand.
ordinance. So yes, it needs to be
think-
mentioned that it is a farmstead as part of the.
Have we ever done that on any plat? But like said, this plat is a farmstead plat and this one is not? I guess I'm not aware of it. A plat is a plat. If
A plat
it's
is a plat.
less than 20 acres, it's a variance. And we can't see what's gonna happen 20 years down the road.
I don't think it makes
So-
any difference at all, because right now, if we grant this variance, we're granting it because it was an old farmstead, and I get that. That's why we're saying, okay, 5 acres. But moving forward, it's a 5 acre plot. It doesn't matter what, it can go back to corn, it can go back to beans, it can go to a house, it can go to another business. It's a 5 acre lot.
Plat of land, yeah.
So they can sell it as a 5 acre lot, and obviously you can, you know, if you buy land, you can always build on it.
Well, I think here's the definition of a farmstead: is a place with empirical evidence of a previous farmstead, including at a minimum foundation, structures, or a tree belt. And so the question, I think, is 20 years from now, if it were to go under and he wants to build a house, or somebody wants to build a house, does this come into play, or are they coming in for a variance to build on a minimum lot size?
But if in 20
Is that
acres
right?
from now, in 20 years from now, it doesn't matter because it's just 5 acres. And
But
can
you would
build-
still
don't
need a variance for
You don't, no, it's all, we're variancing it right now. And
The
then it's
lot
done.
size.
Then it's a 5 acre plot. It's not gonna go back to being anything else but a 5 acre plot.
We variance in the lot size now, but the permitted uses are still permitted
Yeah,
uses, and
I
what he's
mean,
gonna be doing
Moving in 20 years,
is
you can
permitted,
build
and
on
whatever is
anything you
permitted
want.
then could be done on it.
Yeah, it
It's-
doesn't have to be a farmstead at that point to build a house on it,
Right,
because it's already a done
an
deal.
established lot.
Right. I mean, I don't think we should be muddying up
Right.
our process here with a lot of, I mean, it
Ifs
is what
and
it
buts,
is. We're
yeah.
doing this today, and then moving forward, it's 5 acre.
Plat of land.
Madam
It's
Chairman,
ground.
I have a question, Madam Chairman.
Yes,
I don't think that there's anything in our ordinance, when we laid it out originally, what defines a farmstead, but what actually tells us today how many acres are in that farmstead that they're taking this 5 acre plot on. So now, the only issue I would see is Donna, what you were talking about, and we're gonna plot that out, but is there still some of that farmstead?
Well, we'll make that a condition on this
Right.
motion,
So that-
that all of the trees, all of the buildings are included in that survey.
But I've seen it happen early on in zoning, when they plot, they issued a zoning or a variance to someone to build, to sell off a farmstead. And in the meantime, they did a roundabout, sold off just a building that was on there, and kept the rest of the farmstead, and turned around and sold it off
Again.
as a, like, quitclaim deed or whatever, and sold a lot more again. So it becomes a issue of how many acres are defined in that farmstead.
Well, like I said, we'll make that a condition of this,
It would have to
this
come back.
motion. Right.
Again, it should come
That all of the
back.
trees, I mean, we do that with everybody that comes through because of that. You know, all of the trees, all of the buildings need to be contained within this farmstead, so they can't split it off and make 2 or 3 of them out of someone's big yard, so.
I think if people can understand. The problem you sometimes run into is there can be stuff on the farmstead that whoever's selling the farmstead, whoever's keeping the ground around it wants to keep, whether it's
Wants to
buildings
keep
or
a
bins
bin or
something.
something like that, well, that's
But
happened.
realistically, if you just read this and stick right to it, it's gotta have empirical evidence of a house. So it's only, unless you're splitting it down the middle of the house, it's only got empirical evidence of one residence.
Right.
So once you lose that residence, I don't care if you kept the trees and the barn and everything outside of there, once you lost that residence, you lost the farmstead as far as I'm concerned. And that's the way we treated it several times, because guys wanted to keep bins and pole sheds and stuff.
Yeah,
So as long as the residence
Because
is in
they
that
have
original
to use it
farmstead
to
that we
farm.
take out of there, whatever size it is, there's never again a farmstead, because there's never another residence, unless, I mean, not that there's not 2 residences on some
Right.
farmsteads, but that's a pretty rare situation. So that's kind of where I fall on it. As long as you got the residence in it, there's never another residence.
I agree.
Anything else?
I ain't shaking his head.
So, in your ordinance, and I kind of, let's make sure where you're going here, is, if you look at section 513, number 3, zoning administrator may allow a smaller minimum lot requirement for a permit for a single-family home is requested on existing farmstead. That's the only thing that can go on an existing farmstead. So this does not qualify for a farmstead exemption or anything. Sure. So this will have to go through the full-blown variance process.
Yes. I mean, this will be a finding of fact why you can approve this, but this won't go through administratively. You can't just approve this because it's a farmstead. It won't be
Nor can
just
you
a-
rely on it being a farmstead. If it's a house,
Sure.
and there are those that were brought to you that aren't clear enough, and I said that when we did this. They're not clearly a farmstead, I'm bringing it to you all to make a determination. But this is commercial enterprise, and explain to the applicant, this will be a full-blown regular variance process.
And that's
But
why,
it's pretty clear we can ask for the residents to be in this 5 acres, you know?
oh, sure.
This can be part of the reason we approve this variance is because it would have been able to be a farmstead plat on its own, and now it's gonna have a commercial use on it technically, but it's still a piece that was a farmstead that could have been broken out. If he decided he was gonna put a house on it, he could have done it, you know?
Now, he might decide he wants to live there someday, who knows? Maybe
Right. I think
maybe
to
his
Brian's-
commute will be 50 steps to the left.
I think to Brian's effect though is that section 513 says we can allow for a smaller minimum lot where a single-family home is requested on existing farm site. And the applicant's not requesting it.
Yeah.
That's why it has to
And
be a
that's why we
variance.
need to get back
Yeah.
to
So,
Just a regular variance.
talking
and not
about
factors.
how do we pass a
So,
variance or
yeah.
how do we make this
so
work?
the people that are concerned about this becoming a house, he could have gone to the zoning administrator, had it done administrative, and would have never even had to come in front of the board according to section 513,
Right.
number 3. That's not what's happening. It's being parceled as a 5-acre plat. And then the hope is that it becomes an ag business, but we can't foresee what's going to happen in the future. So,
So again, I think we got it back to talking about why we need to, why we feel this variance is warranted. for it.
Well, the only problem that I have is we don't have a plat. We don't have a defined number. We don't have
Sure.
a defined area. We don't have anything defined. You know,
I know there's no pins, but you're looking at, where's Dallas at? You're looking at going from the south corner up to the north side of the trees.
Yep.
Okay.
I do gotta agree with you, how can we give a variance when we don't have a plan?
I don't know that I've ever taken action on a variance without a plat.
Well, but I don't think it's possible. I really don't.
Did we,
I talked to Ron, he said in Clay County that you don't put the cart in front of the horse. You spend a lot of money on surveying land, and then you come in and you don't get it. You just wasted time and money. And Ron was unwilling really to go do a plot or plat it out without. He told me that himself, and he was in Bryan that day.
So you have to look at intent. So your intent is to build this structure, everyone understands that. But in our magical world that we live in today, if it's not defined in specifics, then how can you say that you can grant a variance? It's kind of like the medical policy we have in effect. We had to pass it before we could read it to find out what was in it. And I think that it becomes, there's so many issues that can tie into this, that I'm gonna build a confined feeding animal operation, but I don't know exactly where the building is gonna be. I don't know exactly how many feet it is from setbacks, but if you give me the permission, then I'll survey it out and that, so you know what I'm saying? So you gotta look at, there's gotta be boundaries and parameters that are equally applied across everyone, whatever industry, business, or house, whatever they wanna do. I think you gotta have some parameters, even if it said approximately 500 feet from the corner to here, approximately 500 feet in, and I mean, that's better than you give us the variance and then we'll come back and tell you where it ended up.
Brian, you have that.
We do
Don't
have
we
that,
have that?
Bruce.
Well,
Looks like from
I think you
the,
do illegal
Right,
pretty easily. It's the west, I'll have to look at what.
Well, this drawing here.
from the fence line north is 593 feet and it's cut off on the top, but we've got
Well, it's, if it's this,
we've got
if he
some
just uses-
dimensions. And I don't know in the past if we've waited, if the board's waited for an actual plat or not. But we've got
Well,
the intent, I guess.
Isn't it, I'm gonna ask you, Mike, just, this is my thought on it, we've done these before, we approved that, the last meeting, we just went through the minutes, there was a Mueller plat there that would, with the access, we approved the variance for the 2 lots to be created out of the 20 acres, but then the access was an issue, so we can't, nothing, that wasn't nailed down either, but we
Right,
approved
see,
it.
I'm okay if the motion, if this goes forward, it says approximately 600 feet north from the
Yeah.
fence line, approximately,
Right, lock down to something.
here's kind of the parameter where it's at.
Yeah.
Then the survey points can come out, but I wouldn't think that you would be, instead of 593 feet, you'd be 450 feet. It'd be 600 feet plus or minus, then whatever it is to the west. That gives you a parameter that says at least this is the spot where it is on the earth,
Right, yeah, using this drawing here.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, here's the definition of map, representation on paper, just depicting a piece of land subdivided into lots, parcels, or tracts. So we have that, like you said, we've got that description here on this, it's 593 foot. So we do have that. Yeah, I can't read that.
Well, we can either move forward on it tonight, or we can do a continuance, and then he can get his paperwork in order for his CUP.
somebody raised it.
Okay. You need to come up to the mic, I'm sorry.
if we
And then you need
reopen
to
public
state your
comment.
name. Yeah, I know.
My name is Dean Mormon. I do own the land, and I am involved in the seed business with Dallas. But I've got a solution. I don't know if it'll work tonight. If we have the exact numbers you want, could we do a dummy vote? If you would give us an idea, let's say everything was right, the numbers were right, like you want. Could you just do a fake vote tonight and say, okay, if your stuff is right, we'll vote yes. If not, we'll go do what you need to do. I mean, it's pretty cut and dried. It's a square piece. I mean, it might move 10 feet one way or another.
I said plus or minus 600
Yeah.
feet by 400 feet.
But I mean, if we,
I would,
like Dallas said, Mr. Peterson in Wakanda didn't want to do this until we had a good idea if it was going to pass. If you could give us a, dummy vote saying if our numbers are correct, it'll pass, we'll go get the surveyor and do it. But if we don't know, I guess we just got to do it anyway. But
Brian, in your experience.
I'm just saying, that I'm trying to be equal to everybody.
Yep, I understand.
So this looks like to me that it's bounded by a 301, approximately 600 feet north, approximately 400 feet west, bounded at 444. That gives you a parameter of plus or minus, that it couldn't move somewhere else.
no, it's not going to
I'm not
move
saying
anywhere
someone would do
else.
that, But I know that there's situations where that stuff does happen. That is-
It's not going to
we
move.
define it. So that's why I'm saying we need to define when we're doing these lots, kind of, if we don't have surveyor pins, at least some places says, where do we find it?
And you're the landowner around it, so if it
Yes.
would be bigger, it would only affect him.
I'm not going to give them an inch.
I guess I would be fine if we did a variance and we set it at a certain 5 acres, and that's what they plot out, 5 acres. And
Brian, in your other
Yeah,
counties and
yeah.
experience, I mean, is there any concern with approving a variance based off of what we have?
Look at the beacon thing quick, and I think there's a very easy way to do this, is especially all that farm. I think it's a 5 acre parcel line in the southwest quarter, the southwest quarter, the southwest quarter. And that gets it, if you draw, I'm not at this level. It's sitting right, I think it's sitting right on that line for the
Yeah,
final
appears
four,
to be.
or the final 10.
It would be.
So you take it right down there, so you have a 5 acre parcel lying within, I mean, that gets it pretty tight. Where that sits, if you want to get something close. At least we know it's there.
Right.
Brian, what happens after we either, let's say we approve this variance, what's the next step for him? Do you have to come back and apply for a conditional use then?
Well, no, if you approve this, I'd say insisted on he gets a plat prepared.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the,
He would have the plat prepared when he came in for the CUP.
well, and before he takes it to the Florida County Commissioner, I think, or Board of Adjustment, because I think this board is going to be the,
I'm just talking that would be his next step. He
I
gets the
think this is the
variance,
big hurdle, and then the next
then
step
he
is
needs
going to be the
conditional
CUP.
use,
Yeah,
and then he can build.
and then he can build.
I just wanted to clear my head, because,
So one other thing, if we're gonna do this, we need to have the owner of the property listed on this, because he doesn't own the property yet, does he? So we've gotta have the owner of the property as the person asking for the variance. We can't have somebody asking for a variance on somebody else's property.
Very true.
Well, it has Southeast Ag Supply as Mr. Mormon a part of it.
You guys are
Yeah,
together
Southeast
on
Ag, they're
it.
business
It's
partners.
for the business, and they're together,
They're
both
business
included.
partners.
I'm still a share of the business.
It's a,
Well,
yeah,
it
John,
depends.
this isn't in the business, this is in Dallas Hanson's.
Well,
so-
the actual variance application is Southeast
Southeast
Ag.
Ag, says it on the back.
Yeah, it says
So
Southeast
they
Ag.
flip back and forth, but the variance application is in Southeast Ag.
We've had some problems in the past with people getting conditional uses and variances on property they didn't own.
Oh, yes.
Or the name was slightly
Yeah,
off
so
on.
we need to keep that a little tighter than we have in the past.
No, you can certainly put contingent on him securing a plat prior to the Board of Adjustment. Well, hopefully the surveyor can get in within reason if they're available, but some, let him have some wiggle room on that, but I think by that legal, by the court of order, that gets it pretty close. You just say a line within that.
And even when you have a plat, the legal always says plus or minus on it. It always says it, plus or minus on it.
Because that's what it's gonna say on the top anyhow, the flag.
Right. Okay, so do we have a motion?
I'd like to ask, can I ask
Alex,
Mr. Hanson a question? Is he here? Can I ask you a question, sir? We want to come up here? So we're doing this variance on agricultural ground, and we've taken a lot of heat about taking ag land out of production and putting it into something else. You know, what if we do approve this, what are we supposed to say? I know this is still an ag business, but what am I supposed to tell people who are upset we're taking ag ground out of production?
So I guess there would be a couple acres south, you know, the grass and the old building site, obviously that hasn't been in productions, but there would be a couple acres.
Okay.
I mean, we'd like to have enough room there to continue to plant some plots, I guess, so it's gonna be pretty minimal, the amount of acres that get taken out of production, I guess. I mean, my gut feeling on this thing is if you can't have an ag business out in the ag, Yankton ag being over here doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. Why you want to drag all that truck and all that stuff through town? Sure. I mean, we need to be, so, I mean, we're talking about an acre we're taking out of production, I guess.
Sure. Okay.
That'd be my response.
Makes sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
There'll be a test plot and there'll be free hot dogs once in a while. What?
It's a condition.
Okay, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the variance.
Okay, and you want to put in that motion that it includes all of the buildings on the farmstead?
Southwest quarter of the southwest quarter.
Section 2395, 55 West.
Bordered by 444, whatever.
444th
Compass all trees.
Avenue. Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Hanson?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, roll call vote when you're ready.
Flemish,
Yes.
Healy,
Yes.
Harper,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Pring,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Welch.
Yeah.
Michael. That was just. Unanimous.
Just call me a moose, we'll keep this straight.
Okay, motion carried. Okay, next item on the agenda, Beeson, Parcel B in Jensen's Edition, Government Lot 2, in Section 1, T93 North, Range 52 West, in Mission Hill South Township. Variance for accessory building size.
The Beesons are requesting a variance for as you said, a building size. If you look at the area that they're in, they're kind of a consequence of an abnormality here, because if you see the size of their lot, but if you continued east there on Chris Road, all those lots are half acre. If you were to go continued west, along the river, if you've been back there, those are all little half acre lots. Then you come around the bend and they start going 3 acres, I believe, immediately to the west, and 4 acres. So he's sitting on a 4-acre parcel that's zoned R3. So when he came in, and I almost made a mistake, he said, well, what do you have, 4-acre parcel? I said, well, then this is your size you can build. And then I looked at the map and saw brown. Well, that's a problem. So he's limited to 800 square feet. He's here before you and his family to request a larger building on that property.
All right.
Can I ask, this is Beeson Ag variance? Is that a misprint?
Where was this at? Sorry.
On the front page.
Oh, the front, I probably a misprint, yes.
Okay.
All right, Beeson's.
I'm Dustin Beeson. Bought that place, seen the lot size, didn't really pay attention that we were zoned half acre. Had full intentions of building a shed there since we bought it a couple of years ago. Talked to the neighbor that'd be the closest to me about it. There was no conflict there. Everything was hunky-dory. They had no issues with it. And then, yeah,
I'm sorry, you can meet all your setbacks where you're planning to place it, so we don't need to variance any setbacks.
correct. Yep, everything will be within the tolerance there.
Well, you got plenty of room, so you should be okay.
Right. Yeah, they're,
And you're not planning to operate a business out of that?
no, it's just for storage. With where we live, you know, in the wintertime, it still gets drifted in. You still have to have equipment to move snow. You still have to have, you know, that lawn has to have something to mow it and everything. Just want to get stuff inside.
Right. Okay, well, this type of issue comes up a lot where we have a larger lot in a more tightly zoned zone, R3 being the most heavily populated rural residential district. And we're in the process of updating the ordinance right now and increasing these limits. And this is one of the reasons why, is we keep having people coming to us and wanting a larger building and having a larger lot where they can actually accommodate that building and still meet all of our setbacks, which you can.
Right.
And which you're planning to do.
Do you have a sidewall height?
10 foot. Plan on making it color match the house and everything, so pleasing to the eyes.
What's the size of your house?
3,300 square feet, I believe.
I'm trying to get a visual of how big that building will be on that lot, so compare it to your house.
Oh. Yeah, the house is 3,300 square feet roughly, then it's got a 2-stall garage on it also.
It'll probably be slightly smaller footprint. of
Yeah,
the section.
yeah, yeah, that's what I'm thinking, that's why I was trying to.
This is not to scale.
No.
This is not drawn to scale.
No.
Don't have any other questions.
Okay, any other questions?
All right.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak about this proposed change? That wants to speak on this variance? Okay, hearing none. Time for public input is now closed. This is the textbook example of what we've been dealing with and why we're trying to update the ordinance as we speak. So, we've done a lot of these variances. This is a situation where he has a more than adequate size for the lot to accommodate the building and still meet setbacks. It's kind of a much bigger lot than is the minimum lot size in that zone, but that's just kind of the nature of zoning. Sometimes they all fit in nice and neat, but most of the time they don't. So. I don't see any problem with this variance. Is there any more discussion?
Move to approve the variance for Beeson application on accessory building size, parcel B, Jensen's addition, government lot 2.
And we just might want to mention in that, or in the findings of fact, that it was a large lot size, not characteristic of the neighborhood. At least it was, you know, a 4-acre lot, so it had more than enough room for the existing setbacks. Excuse me.
I think we also need to identify that even though it is zoned high density, the area that it is sitting at is a low density area in a high density zoned area. Because the same question is gonna come up out by the lake, and then it's a high density area,
All
high
around,
density
yeah.
population.
Yeah.
So I think we need to add that in as a clarifier, that how did we get to this, right? It's a zoned high density, but it's a very low density in that area. And the appropriate lot, you know, it's a way bigger lot size.
Right.
Because right now, we're kind of trying to solve, until we get the zoning ordinance fixed, how do we get it so that when someone else goes, well, I'm in the same zoning, and, well, there's a different, each property is unique, right?
Right.
I think we need to identify that.
I think the huge key is just that there's
There's a
no
4-acre
the
lot.
setbacks work.
Setbacks all fit.
Yep.
And there's no neighbors complaining about it. It's not affecting anyone's view, there's not affecting anyone's ability to use their property. It's a storage shed. So do we have a second to his motion?
Hanson.
Yes.
Michaels. Yes. Williams.
Yes.
Schultz.
Yes.
Healy.
Yes.
Clemish.
Yes.
Frame.
Yes.
Harper.
Yes.
Welch.
Yes.
Motion carried. All right, next item on the agenda is the Tao Ryland variances. Lot A of parcel C, Weaverstad's addition, the south one-half of the southeast quarter in section 21, T93 North, range 54 West in Gayville Township. Variances are multiple. Minimum lot requirement for 2 principal dwellings from 20 acres to 0.8 acres, and second from 20 acres to 0.69 acres. Okay, who wants to speak? You want to start?
As you're all well aware, this is an issue that's been around a while. So this is our first step here, I believe, to work through the system and,
Maybe not all of us.
okay, me neither, so. For some of us, some people, I'm not gonna say some, that's not proper either. I'm not one of us either. Well, anyhow, let's move on. What we have here is what would be called a lot, for those, a little less than a non-conforming lot, which doesn't meet the 20-acre lot size, and there's lots of them in the county. So we have a non-conforming lot with 2 principal dwellings on there. Well, in section 1503 of your ordinance, you're allowed to have 2 principal dwellings on a lot, provided it meets area for lot size and yard sizes. Well, of course, this is not a 20-acre lot, so therefore, you shouldn't have 1 house, let alone 2. So these multiple variances are under the 1503 to basically say, yes, we're having 2 lots, 2 houses on a single lot, and Therefore, we're giving variances for the lot size, thus the small lot sizes. And then we're also giving variances for yard sizes to meet this lot. Why are we doing this? Because there's a garage that's also in play that was constructed previous to my tenure, which technically should not have been constructed because it's a non-conforming use. So it can't be expanded by the ordinance. Again, something that has occurred numerous times in the county, and here we have it before us today. So we can do the variances, make that garage allowable by doing it, because then it's non-conforming, it's not a non-conforming lot then. Or we don't do the variances, and you deal with the garage straight up and look at it as a direct violation some time ago of the zoning ordinance, and just say, well, we allowed a non-conforming use to expand or continue or survive without anything else. But one thing to note is there is nothing in here where they're creating two separate lots. And that's why in 1503, we're not creating two lots. On paper, in the description, there's two lots, but there's not a plat there. They cannot subdivide or do anything else to this property. So that's the purview here. I want that very clear, that we're not they're not proposing two lots. This is kind of brain or whatever thought process came up with this to give us really two options. You can go through the variance process, look at it that way. If that doesn't pan out, then you look at it straight up as a simple, we have two structures, we have a non-conforming lot, we have this garage we have to address. Now garage has been there a long time. Now it's sitting before you to how are we going to handle this. We have not destroyed a building or removed a new building in this county, to the best of my knowledge, for any violations at all. So we have this to look at and try to decide how we're going to handle it.
What brought it about? That's what I don't understand. What's changed where this, if it's all there, what's changed? What's the purpose going forward?
Wow.
Change finder software.
Was the garage found by an aerial photo? Is that how the garage was found?
Yes.
And
So
software.
there was a whole bunch of stuff found all the way through the county from aerial photos of people who had things that didn't meet zoning or didn't get building permits, and that's what I think this is. They didn't get a building permit, didn't know they had to get a building permit.
Okay. That's what I was trying to find the purpose. Everything else up to this point in my short tenure here has had a purpose, not just,
Right.
not equal to this reason here. So that's, okay, so that makes sense.
So that brought the garage to the forefront.
Okay.
There were
And-
literally, if you guys remember, there was, I believe, well over 100. There was an entire house built somewhere that didn't have a building permit. I mean,
No, I'm just curious. I just want to know
yeah.
where this starts, that's all.
Now, this property's been before us before. Dennis, you probably remember this property coming in with the guys that were doing the kayak tours.
Yeah.
So, this property, and my understanding is the residences that are on it have been on it for a long, long time.
Okay, I'd like to add something to that. And Mr. Tao, I'm not against you, I'm gonna ask questions.
I'm not done yet. You got a chance to talk. You got a chance to talk when I'm done. So this property was before the board with these two houses on. And as far as I'm concerned, it's grandfathered in with those two houses. Those two houses were before zoning. Whatever is there with the two houses, that's grandfathered in. The action on the garage itself is an action that we need to decide how we're gonna take, but there hasn't been any lots of record with any building on them that were considered a non-conforming use, because there's still tons of these in Yankton. There's still tons of lots that don't meet the acreage size and where they're supposed to be. And we don't go in and tell people that they have to tear a house down or anything like that. We ask them to not make the non-conformance any worse, is generally what we do.
Correct. Or expand upon it.
Now, building a garage probably made the non-conformance worse. But, it is there. It is a mistake that was made by a whole bunch of people, and I think that's what we need to address. I don't think we need to address two buildings that were built long before zoning unless they had a plan, because I didn't know how this was. If they had a plan to sell one or do
That's what I
something,
was curious.
that would be different. But anything that's long since grandfathered before zoning came into effect, we shouldn't have to have anything to do with unless they're asking to do something with those two structures. Break one off and sell it, add on to it, make the non-conformance worse on one of those structures. All I foresee that we really need to deal with is the structure that was added without a building permit. And that's up to the board how we're gonna deal with that.
I agree with that.
But these structures themselves, they're grandfathered.
I mean, we could go on for years on all the non-conforming lots that are in this county. I don't think you even need to go down that road.
John. All right, sorry to interrupt John before. So I was the chairman of the planning commission in previous last year when this came out, and I believe it was overview or whatever that identified Mr. Tao's garage structure that is right on the property line. And when that came forward, the other issue was, and it goes back to somebody with running kayaks, and he bought the land, and I don't remember exactly when, and the people that were running the kayaks, they were living in Sioux Falls, but they were coming down to the property here to help Mr. Tao kind of look after it, take care of it, maintain it, because I believe Mr. Tao was in Sioux Falls himself. So Mr. Tao, in accordance with my memory, said that they were kind of just camping out in this second house. It was actually a garage that then got converted into a secondary house. So I don't know when that happened, but kind of tying with John, I mean, I think this building was, the second house was there, but it was kind of like a garage or maybe like a little apartment that then grew into a house. And they closed off the garage and then they added the other garage. So one of the things, this is a huge, I mean, how do you go forward, right? You can't change history, so you gotta look at where you're going forward. But Mr. Tao did go to the city of Gayville to ask about a permit about 6 miles southwest of Gayville, and Gayville city limits is pretty much mom, pop, the Valley Ag, and the school. So I guess my question is, we had this happen, and now we have 2 911 houses on the same address. I think that's also an issue. Then we don't define that, but that's going to be the county EMS has to define that. I mean, I've been a fireman in EMS, and when you show up and it's which house, that's a very serious thing. Now, do we do like McKinnon Park and someone has to tear this down? No, but I want to throw something else out there. So we have these non-conforming structures, and one of them was converted into a second house, and I believe after the 2003 zoning was added in. So we're looking at allowing all this, send them to church, say a confession, and all is good. But we had someone only a month ago, the only thing he violated in the zoning ordinance was he didn't start construction in 180 days.
We're talking about a separate issue. That's not what's before us right now. We need to
Christie,
stick to what is on
it's a
the
separate
agenda.
issue, but it applies across the whole county. If you're not gonna apply rules.
That isn't the rule we're talking about, Moose.
Well, how you treat people is, that's one of the issues that's sitting here right now. If you can do a non-conforming use on a big building and you're right on the property line, and I don't know what the resolution's gonna be, but it's gonna be, hey, man, next time, don't do it, and we'll put a thing in the paper, other people don't do it. But we tell someone else that because if you're gonna violate a zoning ordinance, you just violate the ones that are only convenient today, or do you follow the book that is written that, I mean, a lot of the book isn't written, I don't think is right. But do you follow everything that's written, or do you only follow the things that are written and apply that make it a good answer for where you're at right now? And that, I think, is the biggest issue of this whole thing. Because the 2 houses, I think we ought to get them where they define that they have 2 separate addresses. I don't care who owns them, but if you have to respond to a fire call or an EMS call, how do you know which one, right?
Because the person on the line tells you.
That's
I'm in the
not
White
true.
House.
That's not
Madam
true.
Chairman, may I have the floor?
Yes, you may.
I have 2 things, and I meant to mention this at the very beginning of this agenda item, but we got off to the races. I would just like to disclose that Mr. Tall was a donor to my campaign, as were 300 or 400 other odd people. But I just want to let that be known. And then secondly, I guess this discussion is what we need to have, but I think we have the cart before the horse. We haven't listened to the presentation and the applicant. And so I'd like to just get that out of the way and then continue our discussion.
Myself as well.
That's a good idea. Thank you. Anything else you want to say on this before we have the applicant come forward?
No, it looks like I got the ball rolling, so I'm done.
And to be fair, you didn't have any backstory or history
Yeah.
to how this came about, so.
I'm trying to absorb it like a sponge here.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Phil Taw, and this is my wife, Dr. Julie Ryland, and we reside at this address of 44873 River Rat Road, Caveville, South Dakota. It has been 9 months to the day since our first hearing regarding this property. Longer than we wanted or intended, yet due to administrative errors, schedules, weather, and other issues, we find ourselves here today. I feel the need to summarize this delay for the newer members of this body and for the public. The first appearance on September 11th of 2018 was challenged. That decision was challenged because of the late posting of the zoning signs. It was 6 days and not 7 because it was Labor Day the weekend before. Mr. Garrity did not post the signs on that Monday prior. That meeting was not too contentious, but two individuals did speak and raise issues that had nothing to do with that original garage variance that we were presenting as proposed by Mr. Garrity. Some or all of that information was not public knowledge, but was given to them by the zoning administrator, the former zoning administrator. So the next meeting was set for October 9th, and it was more contentious, and accusations flew about our septic system stuff that may be running into the river, and the entire property was non-conforming, and therefore no action should be taken. The hearing itself was halted when it was pointed out that the official ownership of the property had changed into our trust's name and not just Dr. Julie Ryland's name, and after having been filed by us with our lawyers several months prior. We were not afforded any opportunity to rebut this or explain how all that happened. At this point, it was clear to us that this case was more complicated and that the zoning office needed to explain to us what the next course of action should be. That explanation never came from Mr. Garrity, and as was his responsibility as described in Article 17 of the zoning ordinance. Due to our fall extensive business travel schedule, we were unable to attend meetings or meet notification rules during the fall. We only received one letter from the former zoning administrator on November 18th, which he sent to our Sioux Falls address, which was tied to the LLC several years ago, an address that we have sold. We were on our way out of town, checked the mail, and then I sent a response letter the next day, explaining our situation and requesting clarification and guidance regarding how the case needed to proceed. One letter was received by us, and he received it on November 26th. Yet, during the P&Z meeting on December 11th, only 2 weeks later, Mr. Garrity said he had been in constant communication, in quotes, with us to resolve the matter. I guess silence must be golden. He also read my response letter to the Planning Commission, as well as a very unrelated affidavit regarding a completely different legal matter entirely. Mr. Garrity indicated that he'd already reached out to the state's attorney within those 2 weeks for him to look into the matter, and Mr. Garrity was going to be done with it. We were never informed of this until February. At the February 12th P&Z meeting, Eric Koenig stated that photos had been shown in the fall of 2018 of our property with a drain field dumping into the river. That is completely and utterly false. And if there were pictures, waiting for the state's attorney's office to investigate the matter was the wrong answer. You call the EPA, you call the DNR, the Corps of Engineers, somebody to get out there and check it. But no, nothing but accusations and slander. I met with Rob Klimisch the next day on February 13th. And as a result, I called the DNR and I scheduled for that property to be inspected, but we had to wait for the snow to melt. Mr. Scott Hipple of the DNR in Pierre was very helpful, and contrary to the statements made by Mr. Garrity, he knew nothing of this situation. In mid to late March, The inspection by the DNR of the property found no violations, none. Not the drain field, not setbacks, not depth, not from the house, not from our well, nothing. This information was eventually relayed to the state's attorney's office. May 14th was the next hearing date, and as you well know, because you were all here, another administrative error once again caused us to defer any decision. So we are here again tonight. We wish for nothing more than to resolve this issue so this board can move on to bigger and better things. But once again, the opposition to this 1.5 acre property has struck, and this time the delay may be longer. An individual, excuse me, an individual has filed a quitclaim deed against our property and our sole ownership thereof. He is claiming 1/3 ownership in our lot and ownership of river bottom land adjacent to our immediate south and west. This filing, this quitclaim deed was filed over 3 months ago, and the process to investigate and file this deed was surely done even months earlier than that. This individual has not, to this moment, informed us of this, and perhaps he's waiting to spring it on us at some point. So, until Mr. Carl Schenk sends us written request for action he is expecting, we are requesting to defer this variance request until such time and when true and proper ownership of this lot can be established. No further statements from the public, either pro or con, should be heard tonight. I apologize for the delay, but this time it continues to not be our fault. If you decide to go forward, any recommendation made tonight surely will be contended by either side, myself or Mr. Schenk, depending on how the vote goes. We await Mr. Schenk and/or his legal counsel to reach out to us for what he expects. I'll be glad to stand here and answer any questions that you may have before we continue and you decide whether you want to defer this matter.
Mr. Tom, my question is, again, my whole big issue is 2 houses with, 1 address. So I don't know how that gets resolved, but I think that the emergency management people are usually the ones that assign the 911 address. So that's like my question. I mean, I was a fireman EMT for 20 years, and I went to places that I didn't know which house was the one that I was supposed to go to. So that is, my big issue, and I was not aware to disclose the other issues that are happening in this property. And again, I want to reiterate, my big issue is how do we identify the 2 different houses? If you're the fire guys coming from Gainesville or Yankton, how do we know which one? And maybe the emergency management gives whatever your address is, 7-3 something, maybe the other one becomes 7-4 or something. It's like tied to the same spot. But to me, that's a huge issue on all this. And I'd also like to thank you and applaud you for contacting the DNR and get a resolution on any septic tank issues that were brought up by anyone.
On my property, I have some property out of Lake that has more than one. It's a campground RV park. It has more than one building on it. And for the E911 address, all they did was label them the same address, Cabin A, Cabin B, because we have to still have E911 during the tour season and everything, you know what I mean? So they should be able to do something relatively simple with them as far as they could go to have an E911 and have an A and B or a 1 and 2 or whatever done, and I don't think that would be that major.
To be brief, I've looked into that matter, Mr. Welsh, and not that I got the runaround, but the offices don't seem to know who to go to get those signs made. But until this issue gets at least resolved, I know I have some ideas about how to do that. But right now, there is an E911 address posted, the blue signs. It's nobody's address there. I'm telling you, it's wrong already. So I would ask you to come to the burning house 4 miles south of Gayville. But I'm trying to fix that now.
I understand that.
Whether any of this happens or not, my neighbor and then our structures need to be protected by that very system that is not accurate and hasn't been for, I'm going to guess, since 2005.
What thing, John, you brought up, you said there were 2 houses. Now, one of these houses were constructed within the last 2 years, is that correct?
That is incorrect.
Yeah, we need to stay on the topic at hand.
Okay, Mr. Will, if I start talking about all these issues and want to answer these questions, and I'm generally happy to do that, but I'm asking for deferral, because any information I'm going to put up here, they're going to want to rebut, and they should be allowed to rebut, even though in October I was not even allowed to explain anything, okay? The ownership of this property and the request that we sent in and worked with Mr. McGinnis, who's been very helpful on this matter. If you go up and look at the quick claim deeds on who the deeds filed for this property, we're not the only ones on it. It was a couple weeks ago in our head, but just a few weeks ago, or a few days ago, we found out about this, so we're trying to resolve it. But you can't make a decision tonight, and I don't want to sit here and explain every jot and tittle of how this all happened. Some of them were legitimate and some of them were mistakes on our part and everybody's part.
Okay. We have an applicant that is asking to have the matter deferred to a later date. Can we have a motion to that effect? We just went through discussing how the ownership of an action needs to be clear before we can vote on it. Clearly, there is some contention in the ownership of this said property, so it is my opinion that we should defer it until that ownership is determined one way or another.
I make a motion that on the June 11th, 2019 agenda, the 7:30 item of Mr. Cow as listed is deferred to a later date when it's rescheduled.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. We'll call a vote when you're ready. Thank you. Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Harper.
Yes.
Healy.
Yes.
Clemish.
Yes.
Schultz.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Welch.
Yes.
Michaels. Yes.
Motion carried.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I guess questions for John and Mr. Michaels. Do you remember when this property came before? Do you have approximate year? Maybe we could find out when it was.
We'll see how good Dennis is memory.
If it's already been through and had two structures and been approved.
I'm gonna say what they came, I can't give you a year, but I'm gonna say they came to us looking to run this river raft outfit out of it. They were clearly gonna do work to make so more people could stay there in buildings and like in tents, and they were taking people and dropping them off with. Yeah, they were dropping them off with kayaks up either in the city or up by the dam, and then they're going down to this property, and then this is the property they stayed on and picnicked on and did whatever as a group. You know, it was, at the time, I thought a pretty positive thing. It was popular and you know, kind of a new kind of thing, and you know, I don't know what happened to it or why it didn't continue. That we don't really get that kind of information when stuff when falls apart.
Mr.
It
Tao,
does look like now, like it's.
I can answer Mr. Clemish's question
Okay.
if he wants to answer.
Sure.
You do have a date? I don't have a date in mind now.
Well, we had heard about this as well, and so we made a phone call to the individual running that company. It was around 2006 or 7 to start that, or to continue the Missouri River expedition. The structures were already there and in place with septic and some minimal plumbing and everything else in there. They wanted to make some improvements to it, didn't expand it, but it was in 2006 to make it officially a residence and a business and a whatever. And they got either whatever kind of permission they got in 2006, CUP or a variance, I don't know, but we just found this out, so we have to go back and find out on microfiche where the notes, the minutes are for that.
Before we did it.
So that's when that happened.
All right, thank you. Motion carried. That item is now finished. So, we are to the administrative discussions.
What did, on the agenda, didn't we put the other discussion?
You added something.
The
Yeah,
working
yeah.
session before that?
Oh, you wanna do that?
Well, that's, I thought we were.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's what we did. We did add that
Yeah.
to set
We're gonna work
the,
on the,
You wanna work on the,
Working sessions for the zoning.
oh, yes. Working sessions for updating the ordinance, like the accessory structures that we've discussed over and over again. People want bigger buildings than what is allowed in the current zoning ordinance. So I was thinking Monday nights at 6 PM, does that work for people?
I just want to make it clear too, that we had at our last meeting, if I
Yeah.
may, can I?
Yes, you may.
speak? Just want to make it clear, at our last regular meeting, we've scheduled a session, but it didn't get noticed, right?
wasn't in the paper.
Wasn't it? So how many of us, six?
So I came twice that.
Six of us,
They entered it.
6 of us showed up and it hadn't been noticed, so we left. So I just want, in
Yeah.
case anybody's curious.
I think I was on Gato, it's.
It was the night after, or,
The Wednesday, then the Thursday, you guys were at Gato.
okay.
So,
Well, it doesn't have to be published. It's, all you have to do is,
Board meeting?
for a quorum to meet.
no, all you
There
have
was
to
some
do is, you
confusion, so that's why we didn't have the meeting.
have to post notice on the door 24 hours in advance and notify the
Whoa.
press. You don't have to publish it.
Well,
Neither
okay,
of those
but
happened.
Noticed, and then.
Yeah, that's a notice, but I heard
Wasn't
somebody
noticed-
say published.
Wasn't noticed properly.
Sure, it wasn't noticed on any agenda or anything or put on the door.
and it has to.
No, but if anybody was watching the meeting last time, wondered if we had a working session in between, because we had talked about it, we actually discussed the date and picked the time,
Right.
but we didn't have a meeting.
We showed up and
Yeah.
then found out it wasn't noticed, so we didn't do it.
It also, may I have the floor a
Yes.
second? We'd also have to publish it because we have a website, so it'd need to be on the door 24 hours, on the website 24 hours.
You know, that's one thing, if you're done.
Yes.
That's one thing I think we should probably do is on every single monthly agenda, we should have something on there that we may be working on the ordinance because, you know, every month, every meeting when we have time, we could certainly work on, as well as administrative stuff, work on whatever changes or, you know, tweaks we need to make to the ordinance, but we really should have that listed
I would agree.
every month on the
Yeah.
agenda.
Yeah. Would agree, definitely.
Does everybody agree with that? I see.
Yeah, I think so. I think we
Just
need
Joe
to.
curious.
nodded his head. What do you want to say?
Curious about a blanket statement like that.
Well, I don't,
I
it
think
wouldn't
we may
be,
be working or discussing it, whatever, but I guess as long as our intention is still to, when we have specific.
As long as we're not voting on it.
You don't,
Right.
anything we would do, you'd still have to have
We're not
a public
making
meeting
any
for, you know,
decisions.
Right.
and have an action and everything.
Right.
When we're working on changes, when we're bringing changes forward, then they'll be described specifically in the agenda a little more, but
Sure.
if you just put something, you know, in there as far as working on
Updating
agenda
or-
updates or something, or working on ordinance updates or something like that is all it really has to say.
Like when we
So-
used to come an hour early to work on the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, you will, like wordsmithing or.
Yeah, I think we could do it anyway, but I think it should be, you know, noticed.
it should be,
Yeah.
I would agree.
Okay.
Well, I think,
Monday nights at 6?
like every Monday? Or, I am, you know, or couple months, couple days a week, what are you thinking? I guess,
Yankton City Planning Commission meets on Monday also. I'm on that.
Mondays are tough, Tuesdays are out.
Thursdays are better for me.
Or Wednesday? Or do we just want to, well, no, we need more time than just coming an hour before the meeting.
I think we probably almost, if we're gonna get some of these things done, we almost need at least two, a month, you
2
know.
months?
You know, to get that done. I guess we, and then nobody's gonna make it to everything, so.
Yeah.
I mean, or we could, what about committees? I mean, you know, would we wanna bust up and, is that an option we wanna look at?
I think we need to define what, and maybe this needs to come from the commission, but what we want to work on, what we want to look at, and then get a plan together, and then
the commission test back in February with accessory structures.
Right.
And I think we still haven't got that done.
No, I think we need to get that done. I just don't wanna say we're gonna meet every Monday night.
Sure.
And start changing things.
Sure. Well, I think the first thing we need to look at is the accessory structure. We had some good conversations on that, was that 2 months ago now? I thought we were actually really
It's been a
close
while.
to it.
We didn't have it locked in, but we all agreed.
I think we were 90% there, to tell you the truth. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So why don't we schedule, whenever we want?
Next Monday? You said next Monday is the city commission? Well, it's not every city,
It's
not every Monday.
Well, it would have been this week. This is the city planning commission is the second Monday. This is the second Tuesday.
Okay, so it won't be next week then?
So Tuesdays, almost every Tuesday of the month,
Right, I
this
know,
is
but-
booked, so we
but
can't do.
Monday, next Monday.
I could do next Monday, but I think maybe we should do also, maybe the third Monday or something, just lock it in. So
Okay.
would everybody feel better with that, so we know not to plan something upcoming, or if we do a different date every single month, that gets confusing to me. It gets hard to plan for, so that's just my thought. But I almost think, one works, if we're doing these changes, I don't know if one
Okay,
meeting
so
a
how
month is
about
gonna be enough to get some of this stuff done.
First and second ones?
First and second
I
Monday?
can't go to third Monday next week.
Why don't we do like a Monday and then maybe a different date, and then somebody who can't make it Monday could maybe make it to the next one? Would that be
Or
acceptable?
how about we do Monday and, we'll go Monday and Wednesday?
As long as.
Start with Mondays, or with next Monday, or
Let's start with next
Let's
Monday.
just do that.
whatever the
So we're
Monday
at-
was.
Yeah,
We start putting all these dates, if we make
Right.
this one to that one, we're gonna be repeating the same conversation.
yeah.
That's a
On
good
Monday,
point.
we'll talk about
That's a
that,
good
on
point.
Wednesday, and then someone else will be talking the same thing. I mean, it's just sort of like, let's just do it.
Let's go next Monday at 6.
30.
6:30? Okay, 6:30.
Next Monday, 6:30.
Got it.
Here. Be here.
Deal.
All right, so,
So,
saying that, when should we make sure this is noticed so that we don't, should this be in Fridays?
We just need to notify
I mean,
the,
we just have to,
County auditor.
we have to be proactive to make sure it gets
Right.
done, because he's overworked.
right.
You
We
need to put, yeah,
Go
go ahead,
ahead.
I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, I don't see us, probably voting. Mr. McGinnis is not gonna be attending these, but probably. And I think what we discussed is kind of get things 95% there, and then move to the next topic. And then at some point, I don't feel comfortable going with too many ordinance changes without having some guidance, I guess. And so as far as that goes, I don't know that we need a public hearing, because we're not gonna move all the way forward. So I think a 24-hour notice on
Yeah,
the
so
door.
we should, but we have to do
And
it,
on the,
meaning we have to do it on Friday, that's what I'm saying. I mean, we gotta be
Oh,
proactive and think ahead, that
Sure.
means we gotta put it on there Friday.
and then notice, and then notify the
Yeah.
press.
I mean, it's just something we all have to check each other on, make sure it gets done.
I think you should task
Yeah,
somebody
who wants
with
to do
that. Not it.
So your agenda on the door, to the press, and on the website. 24 hours in advance, and you're covered.
I moved Donna be in charge of notifications, since she's vice chair.
There you go, Donna.
I will do it.
Thank you, Donna.
All right.
So is that an official action, or is that a discussion agreement? Was there a
That's
motion?
just a
Discussion.
That's just a,
Okay.
I'm just gonna make sure.
I asked that Donna does that.
No, setting the date and time. Did we do anything? You just
6:30
agreed? Great.
But again, I'd like to make another comment. I guess I want to address, Joe, what you say, because sometimes, words matter. So we start talking about making changes. We don't want to make changes with it. Well, we're going to discuss making changes. That's what the whole thing's about, right?
Right.
I mean, the working session. Obviously, we're not going to have public hearing. We're not even to that point yet, but we have to, as a board, decide make a decision. This is what we would like to see for accessory structures, so I'll just use that. And this is what we want to recommend to the county commission, that these are the changes that get made to the ordinance, right? And then start that process.
Yep.
But we haven't even got to that point. We can't even get to that first. So I don't even want to talk about public hearings and all this other stuff, because it gets people all, oh, they're making changes, right?
Sure.
So you got to be careful. We're not making any changes. We're making recommendations on what changes we'd like to see based on the information that we have.
Right.
Does that sound fair to everyone?
Wouldn't we have to bring in front, like, almost have them at a regular meeting?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is just the first part. We're not even to the point where we,
That's exactly right.
Yeah, but we have to get to the point, we have to make a decision as a commission on what we'd like to recommend to see changed, right? So, but we keep talking about the final result, but we haven't even got past the first step. So I guess maybe I'm showing my frustration already, but I would just want to make sure that everybody's clear what's going on and what we're trying to do. You know, we're just getting this started.
We're doing our homework, people.
And Madam Chairman, for the public, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, you know, one of these work sessions, we get it hammered out, then it has to be a hearing that's notified 10 days in advance and a reading by this board, and then 10 days, then it goes to the county commission, and there has to be another hearing advertised 10 days in advance, so it can't be the following one. It would have to be the next one, which is 2 weeks. It's all notified 10 days in advance, and I believe there's 2 readings, is there not?
Well, the planning commission does not have a hearing, it does not have a reading.
Okay, I thought I read that it had to be according to like section 1803.
Yeah,
You have a public hearing,
Yeah.
but you don't have a reading.
Okay.
There's no reading at a planning
So there's a public hearing where we get citizen input the entire time, the hearing at this board, and then the 2 hearings for the county commission, all spaced minimum 10 days apart, which is really going to be 2 weeks. So this is a 6-8 month process.
Well, that's what I say,
So
which
it's-
allows for plenty of
Yes.
input.
Yes,
So,
yes.
yeah, I think it's worth discussing that, you know.
It's not something that can happen
Right.
overnight.
Your toughest task is going to be limiting public input so that you can get work done. And when I wrote the ordinance originally, we sat in my office, and I bet there were 30 people crammed in our conference room. And everyone wanted to participate. Well, it's like you can't get work done when you have 30, 40, 50 people interjecting ideas. Because again, at a public meeting, they can sit and listen. They don't have the right to speak. And yes, you want them to speak, but your progress will never move forward. And you just got to hammer that out. Then you take it, and then I would recommend take it to the county commission before you take it to public hearing, so they know what's going on, because they're the people that are going to get jumped. Then take it back for planning commission, public hearing, recommendation, county commission, public hearing, first reading, second reading, notice of adoption, and away you go. But that is the toughest part in your seat, is going to be limiting public input while you're trying to move forward.
In the changes that we made before, we didn't really have public input when we were making the changes. We invited the public in to listen and see what was going on, but until we got to the hearing, we didn't really open up to the public. They can come and watch us work, which I think is a good thing, and they can hear what we're saying and why we're saying it, but we really didn't open the floor to public comment on what we were doing at that time until we got to the public hearing. In other words, our work sessions were for us to work under the scrutiny of everybody being able to see what work we're doing. But we didn't really open up to public comment until we had a public hearing.
That's how it was when we worked on the comprehensive plan for how many months? 8 months?
We just don't want to do this in some private secret meeting or something, you know, that's not the way it works. I mean, we want to have it in meetings where we're doing it.
Well, just so nobody thinks that is how it works.
Yeah.
I want to be perfectly clear that that's not how it works. Anyway, that's enough.
Okay.
All right, I have
Moving
a
on.
couple items I want you to look at quickly, and then we're going to jump into the big one that's conditional use or granting extensions or whatever, how you want to look at it. First one is going to be one with a plat. This situation here is you'll see 2 lots that are shaded. I handed it out before the meeting. I have an individual who came to me and they would like to build a building that looks like, as you see the second page, It looks like this. What he wants to do is restore his boat in there. So he'd be buying property in a commercial, lakeside commercial district. Well, there really isn't a use called private boat restoration building. Okay, you could add a residential structure, which those of you who are familiar with the area, there are a few of those down there. Metal buildings, big garage doors with a residential element. He doesn't want to add that. So I'm scouring the ordinance, thinking this property is going to be right next to where the new large storage units are going perpendicular to Deer Boulevard. Down there. So basically, he could technically work on his boat and offer service and advice to other people's boats, which would qualify as a service establishment, which is a permitted use in a lakeside commercial area. I could make that leap, but I'm just not sure where you want to head with this. And again, I don't want to practice too much discretion here without a little bit of guidance. You can peruse your books and see here.
What is the sidewall height on that building going to be?
I don't have
Say
the,
20 feet? Is that what's
It's a
written on here?
20-foot door, it looks like.
20-foot door, or is it 20 foot to the peak?
8 foot to the side, the small building
sidewall and then up from there.
So I would
So
call
the
that
door's
probably
probably-
14 to the other side.
If
I'm
it's
thinking
just
20 to 20 feet.
Well, proportionally to what's going to be built next to it, it's not going to be an issue.
Oh, okay, so it is conducive to the.
So basically, those large storage unit stalls that are dark brown and tan, there's boom, 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 3 of them. The same thing is being built perpendicular to Deer Boulevard right next to this property.
Yeah,
And-
all by the dog kennel.
Sure. And right next, and the issue is he wants to close on the property on Friday if he can build this building and use it as, store his boat in there and tinker with it, basically. He restores old Chris Crafts and things, old wooden boats like that.
So this is not a residence on here.
He could add it, but right now he's not adding it at the moment.
By adding it, well, it doesn't matter. He's not planning on living in this at this time.
At this time, no. Like I said, I can make it fit as a service establishment, I think,
It's a service establishment.
Service establishment.
and let him go. Okay? Everyone content with that? Anyone not?
Do you need a motion on it, or just?
No, I just, you really can't take an
Your
action.
dilemma is because it's zoned 2 different ways? Is that-
No, I'm just, it's a big garage and a,
2-acre lot, right?
yeah, it fits, it's just, it's not that use, a personal garage is not really a obvious use, but it could be a service establishment. I'm making a little bit of a leap, Donna, so I want a little support.
Yeah.
The question is, if it was in one, residential, you couldn't do it. If it's in one, you could do it. And you're just.
This is in Lakeside Commercial all the way around.
But if he was gonna build it and rent that out, it'd be a commercial, just like the rest of them.
Self-storage warehouse or something, then you'd be okay.
Yep.
All right, well, we'll run with that then. Next one, the colorful one, quickly here. This gentleman, his property's in the blue or whatever rectangular. I'm sorry, I thought this would come out a little better. Basically, his house is, I'd guess, about 10 feet into the Lakeside Commercial, the pink property. And he wants to add a garage. Well, he's in the Lakeside Commercial, so single-family dwellings are conditional use in Lakeside Commercial. So if he wants to add a garage, he needs to go through a conditional use process because he's expanding a conditional use. That's how I would interpret the ordinance. Does anyone disagree with that? So he'd have to go through the conditional use process, which would benefit him because he already has some sort of a shed. Then he could have as big a garage as he wants, and he wouldn't have to go through a variance. But that line, I don't know, has that line ever been adjusted for someone without going through a process? Since it cut his property in half?
We Guys, didn't we dealt with that quite a bit a few years ago? Do you remember that, Zane? When we had all those properties that were half commercials?
We did this out on East,
Yeah, you probably remember that, don't you, Moose?
Behind like James Steel.
Yes, yeah,
That-
those
that
ones, yep.
circle, whatever that circle is back there.
All that stuff, yeah. that
Yeah,
was one.
that was quite a few properties that were both of them. Yeah.
Split right down the middle like that.
And that was that an error on the software when they overlaid it? It just moved a little bit or something?
you know, you gotta make a line somewhere.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
there
you-
was no computer when we did this. It was 600 feet or 500 feet from our center on the highway. We didn't have digital plats. You never knew where it
Well,
landed.
The majority of the lots all line up, and then there's this oddball that you, it's
Yeah.
like the border wall.
So his option is stay as a condition, stay lakeside commercial, get a conditional use and build as big as building as he wants, or slide up into R2 and then need a variance because he wants to build a bigger garage than or more square footage of accessory buildings than what he's allowed.
So the garage would physically be on the lakeside commercial.
Yeah, because it's his property. It'd be between his house and the existing garage, and this, like I said, that pink line's 10 feet behind his property. Or not behind his, but his house and garage.
If it's in that area, I think those are the rules we
Might as well
have to
take
use.
advantage of it,
Yeah,
I
I
guess.
guess that's,
Well, if it's one parcel, can it be zoned two different ways? I mean, can you have one whole parcel that's
we have a lot of
That has
properties
double
like
zoning.
that.
Yeah, see, they ran his property line goes right up to the bluffs there.
Well, I
With that-
understand that the line,
But yeah, the zoning
But is
cuts
that-
it cuts his property in half, yes.
it does have.
It happens.
Almost even, well, not evenly, but real close.
Can I add something? That property, there's several of them out there that go all the way up the hill. They go up to the edge of that bluff above. Evidently, that's how it's sold. You got the cropland go on the flat land. And so long, the cropland happens to all be in residential, most of it.
All right, so I'll take this and stick with Lakeside Commercial, and he's going through a conditional use process for his garage. So it's gonna be an odd one when you see it come through with whomever, but that's what it'll be. All right. Next issue is, I guess I'm not sure how it all played out. I was somewhat close. Dan or Joe, if you don't mind introducing kicking the extensions issue back down to the planning commission for review. It started as a question about extensions, and can I grant them? That's how it started. Or the zoning administrator, can I grant them? I don't believe I can.
Well, I think this board, we've said it, I don't think we've ever taken a roll call vote on it. And so the county commission tasked the planning commission with an official recommendation.
Yeah, I'll go back. There's been several people who have contacted Mr. McGinnis questioning if there's any way to extend their conditional use permits, that they are coming to expiration or have come to expiration. And so that was brought up at the previous commissioner meeting. It was not posted on the agenda, so we had some discussion about it, but we could not take we couldn't take action on it at the last meeting. And so the request was that we take action on this following meeting. Being the planning and zoning meeting fell between the meetings, there was a motion to discuss it within this group to make a decision or at least a recommendation. And it kind of follows through with some of the we brought the drainage questions to the Drainage Commission for recommendation and brought some different planning and zoning questions to planning and zoning. So I guess it kind of followed suit. Like I say, we couldn't make a decision last week anyway, so.
With the Class F policy, there's a lot of criticism that it didn't go through the zoning and planning board first, so we're giving the zoning and planning board an opportunity to get input on it.
So the big question is, can the zoning administrator of that office grant extensions for anything? Conditional uses, variances, or building permits? Now, there's a question of how you interpret the ordinance, what would need an extension, but the fact is, there's nothing in the ordinance, in my opinion, and as well as the state's attorneys, that gives you power to grant an extension. But now the state's attorney, has said possibly he could come up with some language, I believe, to possibly maybe, and I don't know where he stands right now today, on coming up with language to grant an extension. But however you debate it, and I've had very numerous conversations as of late, what expires, whether the conditional use expires, or the variance expires, or the building permit expires, I do not believe I have the ability to extend any of those, because there's no legislation or language in the zoning ordinance that allows me to do so until this board and the governing body grants that to me or states that I have it. I won't go out that far on a limb for anything.
Well, we're an advisory board, right? And we follow the ordinance. So if the ordinance, we've talked about this on not just on a lot of already in the last few months about different things, whether you can extend, we can change what's in here or make extensions. We even read that. We looked at the old ordinance and said it was pretty clear that you can't extend it by the ordinance.
Right.
But could you change the ordinance? So for instance, this is not in relation to any specific piece, but we had 6 months on a conditional use permit. What if we changed the ordinance that it went to a year? Because really, when you think about, like, whatever the conditional use is, it doesn't really, there's a whole bunch of factors, you know, like this year from October to now, we've had the highest runoff we've had in Missouri River ever. And or you had other situations where there was a natural event like a 911, it changed bank financing and everybody kind of stopped for a little bit. Can we change the ordinance that it goes instead of 6 months to a year? Because I think if you haven't done something in a year, you went through a whole bunch of stuff. But, you know, we recently saw something where it started raining about the same time this guy got his conditional use permit, and it was raining until like 2 weeks ago. I mean, we're only at like 30% planted in crops. So can we change the ordinance that it goes to a year if we can't extend it? I mean, if
Well, we'd have to go.
change an accessory structure.
We'd have to go through the process we just described about the other changes. Yeah, I think it's something definitely to look at. I mean, 6 months is not a very long time for.
This is an act of God.
Well, so that's the next step, and I heard that because I was at the county commission meeting and heard that, and not to dominate the conversation, jump in, but I mean, yeah, but that's a decision that this is my thoughts on. My feeling is, how can this board? We can't make that decision. I mean, it's got we're an advisory board anyway. We're going to make a recommendation. It goes back to the county commission. They're going to make it. They have to make that final decision with the state's attorney and everybody else who's fishing for a reason. I don't mean fishing in a derogatory or I'm just saying he's looking for a reason to extend this act of God or whatever you want to call it. But we can say yes, no, maybe, doesn't matter. But if the state's attorney's got to come up with an act of God clause and the county commission's got to have the ultimate vote, why are we even discussing it? That's my thoughts, because I don't even think this board, it's not our place to do it. I really don't think it is. We're here to make recommendations based on the ordinance, not to make one-time exceptions or exemptions for act of God or whatever else. It doesn't matter what we say anyway, because ultimately it goes back to the commission, and that's, and I'm sorry guys, but I don't think that was the right thing to do. I think you guys got to make the decision, and I don't think putting it back to us is going to change anything.
Well, I think they have their answer. They asked the state's attorney, and he says it's against the law.
I mean,
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's not.
You just open you're just going to get sued. It's just, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it, and then you're just going to end up in the courts.
And the 6 month, that's standard. Every
Because
county
we're
has
doing
that
something
6
we all
month.
know
Yeah.
is not in.
There's
And
clear
I-
court case, I mean, which Brian mentioned, and I have that the state's attorney sent to me as, you know, court cases that went to court and got defeated because, you know.
And I agree with you. That's not this board's responsibility to make the decision, should we or shouldn't we? But I think the intent, I guess, is, and like I say, it kind of fell in between the meetings anyway. The intent isn't should we, it's can we. And based off reading through the ordinance, is there a path? And if somebody here says yes, because of this or whatnot, we discuss it. Ultimately, the commission needs to make that decision, I agree.
No,
But
that
it's,
if there were a path.
it's,
And I
that's
don't
the
believe
question
there
is,
is.
is there
If there were a
path?
path, that path would be clearly defined with what reasoning. You can't just have these things hanging out there all the time. And, I mean, what's one person's definition of an act of God is another person's, well, I wanted to go to Tahiti for 2 years. I mean, you can't, it's not in the book. I mean, when we change it, if we decide to change it, we would define certain hardships and certain ways in which to do that. We wouldn't
See,
just make it blanket.
I don't think we want to extend it. I went back and looked where I used to build and develop in South Carolina, and that was a year there. So it's, it's kind of somebody picks out what fits, right? But I look at this and I've been thinking about this and it's like, okay, this is a weather event. But what if somebody gets a conditional use and then on the way to Sioux Falls, the husband or wife gets killed in a car accident, and now the estate has to be settled, and it's not gonna happen in, the next 4 months. But a year seems like to me a reasonable period that if there was some event, there's enough time that something's like a probate or something like that settles, or it rains for 7 months, then, but a year seems like it doesn't really affect us, but 6 months could affect the people in the county that are trying to do something.
That's all good, and this is a discussion we're gonna have going forward over the next couple of years. We're gonna straighten this out and figure out.
I think we need to,
want it
yeah.
or we don't want it. But right now, where we sit today,
Right.
it's not in there.
It's not in there, you
Well,
can't do it.
we
The
discussed
state's
it. Brian, you
attorney
came
said
to,
so.
I'm sorry.
Well, I'm just
No.
saying that the state's attorney says it's not in the ordinance, you can't do it, it's not legal to do it.
You came to us previous meeting with this question, with a question about extensions. At the end of the meeting, we discussed it. We discussed this before. And I think I asked you, is it cut, what's it say it here? It said, well, it's cut and dry, it's black and white. It says I can't. And we ended the discussion. So why are we, I mean, I understand that there's people with hardships, and I don't think anybody, but that's not, I still say that this board cannot make any, were we gonna recommend to not follow the ordinance? I don't understand, what would our?
Make a recommendation to add this on the list of like accessory structures and other
Well,
things.
That doesn't solve our problem.
I think I agree with you, Mike, on that. I mean, but I don't think that addresses that tasking us
Doesn't
with.
help what's
You
being
can't
asked,
solve
but.
history, but you can change where the future goes.
And I'm not saying don't do it or don't do it, I'm not.
Right.
But I don't know if this board is here to decide that. I mean, you guys are gonna have to decide that with the state's attorney ultimately anyway.
The one thing under South Dakota statute, though, is, and it depends how far you take this, though, is, and I get nervous when you talk about committees for looking at zoning, because it's very clear, the planning commission is charged with any revision to any zoning document, so they are an advisory body. And that's all you do. The county commission does a lot of other things besides, payroll, roads, name 100 other things. So it would be logical, and I'm not defending one side or the other, that things come back to the planning commission to offer their opinion. And that's all they're asking for. They're not saying, if you say, in your opinion, you're not allowed to do it, grant extensions under section whatever of the zoning ordinance, then that's what it is. I don't think anyone's asking you to figure out a way to cheat the law or bend it or twist it or any of that. It's just statute is very clear that the planning commission is an advisory body, that really the governing body can't do much without that action by the planning commission.
Okay, so if you want a motion,
Well, I'd still like to say something.
Sure.
I think part of the problem is there was other things involved in this besides the weather. There was the idea that they were going to be able to keep going. There may be extensions out there for them, and they weren't as worried about it as they should have been. I guess part of what I would like to see is, and it even goes to this tonight with this plat, I would like to see more work done before it comes to us. In other words, when they're doing some of this, if these fellows had done more of their work before they came and got the conditional use or the building permit, they would have been in a better position to move forward, whether it's the description of a plat or whether it's the financing of a project or whatever it is. I think it would help if they were farther into the project before they came and got the conditional use. Now, I understand you're not gonna have everything done because you've gotta find out if you're gonna get
Huge amount of expense if you're even gonna get it. So I mean,
But-
we've had that discussion for 2 years.
But a lot of it is not the expense of doing it, you know, as far as financing and some of that stuff. And financing is oftentimes what the problem is if you wait till afterwards and then you go get the financing. And it isn't even that you're not getting the financing, it's just the delays, the institutional delays that happen when you do things, you know? And it would, I think, part of what will come from this is that I hope people will take more time before they come in and get a conditional use to get their ducks in a row, so that when they come in and get a conditional use, that's not the first thing they did, that they're more ready to go, or at least ready to start. You know, I think if this was a situation where some of these had been started and this weather and rain came and you said maybe the ongoing construction didn't go forward in the way it was supposed to, you know, to keep the ongoing construction, that you could go and say, well, you know, the weather didn't allow for that. You know, maybe that is something you could be a little bit more lenient on. But
Where does it say in here, John, or the whole board, where does it say that the building has to be done? I don't see anything in the wording of this whole 1723. It doesn't say anything about it, that it has to be finished.
2 years.
Look at 1725.
2 years, we're
Look
talking
at,
about 6 months.
look at 1725, not 1723, look at section
it has
1725.
to be started. See, that's the thing. I think
But
it's-
some of them have,
Need
and
to
some
be
of them have been digging dirt, they get stuck.
Yeah,
So what's that?
But
You know, there's-
digging dirt is not building a structure. The main structure needs to be begun.
But ma'am, there was no place between the 28 below zero, the bomb cyclone, and now, when are you supposed to get that done? And do you want them to come in and completely start over from
Well,
ground
they
zero?
got all the paperwork.
So
The
why do-
paperwork should be
why
done.
do
They can
large-
reapply.
I'm just asking, I don't know.
Well, I'm just saying that the law doesn't allow it.
So when I do multi-million-dollar contracts and all federal stuff, what happens there is there's a definition of pre-engineering, architectural work and all that is
I have no
actually
idea. I haven't
completed or
looked.
permitted before
Don't
actual
care.
site work is involved, right? So I think, you know, like, if you're building something, maybe some of the work that's being done is the architect, the engineer, the, you know, application permit to the DNR, whatever. If all those things, those are part of work pieces that go to that structure. It's not just that they start laying concrete or they put the first 2x4 up, because you can't get to that till you get architecture and engineering done, right? So you have to be able to look at what does define work. And I think when based on, you know, these contracts that I write to do federal properties, architectural engineering services are work that apply to that property.
It's not building a structure. It says in there, building
There's a reason they
on
said
the structure.
that you have to have,
Right.
I mean, I don't know.
When Jamesville came to us with their CUP, they had everything ready to go. They had everything in line down to a gnat's you-know-what. And they handed it to us, we could go through it, we got the packet a week ahead, we went through everything, we could ask all of our questions. They had everything ready to go. And I think that's kind of a key here. We had an incident earlier today where they didn't have everything, you know, up to snuff, and it should be ready to go when it comes to us. So then, when they get their approval, they're ready to start building.
You know, I'll say some of the applicants did have
And some of
fairly
them
complete,
did.
you know, pretty
Correct.
complete application one.
They did.
And the issue is the weather is, I mean, it was a hell of a year. It was.
Still is.
And but the question is not, do we feel like we should take pity on people and extend it, or the question is, can we? And I'll just share, because some of it's been brought up. I had a discussion with Rob the other day, Klimish. He's not here, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I asked him about the act of God clause, because that was brought up at the commission meeting. And I said, so how would that look, how does it go? And he said, I'm not saying you can do that, I'm just saying if there was any shot, that would probably be your only shot. He goes, there is nothing in here and nothing in state law that says that you can do this. He goes, I'm not saying it's possible, I'm just saying it would probably be your best shot. So that being said, we furthered the discussion. I said, what would it look like? When would we start? When would it end? How would this work? And what we came around to was one very large concern is the noticing and the hearing portion. So as of now, you have a project that was scheduled to commence within 180 days, let's say. Okay. Work does not begin, or construction does not begin within that 180 days. And Johnny Public thinks that this permit has expired. Okay, and then somebody comes in, or we say, you know what, we're gonna give you an extra month. And there's not proper notice of that extension, there's not proper, so it almost would have to go to a case-by-case scenario with proper notice and hearing, coming in front of us, coming back in front of the Board of Adjustment to ensure that all of the legal notices and hearings were upheld. That was Rob's main concern by the end of this. And if we do have to go through all that, we're in the CUP process.
Does the state law define that it can only be 180 days? Because I think that's...
No, they leave it up to us.
So, like, this one pops into my head, and I know it took a long time, but I don't know how many days. From when the real estate closed on Dakota Plains until they actually started construction. Because that was also one of those ones that went over the winter.
Sure.
If I remember. I mean, I might be a little bit wrong. But I'm just looking again about, so when we're looking like accessory structure law, how do we make it right? We can't go back and change history. But I honestly think that to us, what difference does it make if it's 180 days or 365 in regards to if we made that a year? You know, then.
You're talking changing.
Yeah,
Okay.
change the
Yeah,
ordinance.
and I agree with you 100%. This is another great example of why we need to look at our zoning ordinances and do some updatings. I agree with you 100%, but right now we have to go with what it says, not what we would want to see. And
You have to say, then let's define it.
Yeah.
Why are we at 6 months as we go forward?
Yeah.
Let's make it a year, and then
Yeah.
either they didn't get their financing, or they got divorced, or whatever else.
Has any houses or other building structures, tell me what's come in front of you, Brian?
I have no idea.
Oh,
Everyone thinks I'm out, I don't know. I have not looked, I don't know what structures.
no, I thought anybody that came before you, or to you and said, okay, we need a building extension, there was no houses or...
The only people who've talked to me, I have one person asked for an extension, and as I understand, he's not interested in a hog barn right now. He's busy doing another project. That's the first I heard. That's what triggered me to say, wait a minute, an extension? We can't grant an extension. That's what started it. And then I had another one come in and ask for a building permit 3 months after their 2 years expired, and they haven't even started work. That was my second. And then maybe John Gunderson came in, possibly. And then Mr. Johnson came in.
I was wondering about like houses or any other construction in Yankton or, you know.
They could be out there, but honestly, I don't know where to look, Zane.
So they don't come in here, are they doing it? We don't know.
Well, you know,
Permit expires, what's that? So if your building permit expires, you can just get another building permit. It isn't the same as a
Conditional use.
conditional use where you went through a big process
Yeah.
to get one.
Right.
See what I
And
mean? You
that's
just
what
get
they
another
can do.
one.
But it's
Come
all
back in
lumped
for
into the
CUP.
same thing on
I understand.
1723, all that information is lumped into
But
traditional.
that building permit does expire. I agree with you. The building permit does expire. It's just that they can just get another one the next day and pay the fee. The only thing is they have to pay the fee again.
I think we did
Give me
have
some clarity, and I will, that's what I'm asking for. That's all I'm asking for
No, I
between both
understand.
boards. And then I will set up, look through a database, and we'll figure out where everyone's at. If it's a chicken coop, a garage, a house, a barn of any sorts, we'll look at all of them. But right now, the only thing that got my interest was when someone said an extension, and that's all that caught my interest. I will say that a couple things quickly. Right now, the main two terms you need to get very familiar with right now in your ordinance, actual construction and due diligence. because that's what everyone's going to be talking about. They've started construction, and have they carried on diligently, which means what would a common person do in similar situations? That's going to come around a lot very soon, if not now. And regarding that other permit I said that came in 3 months after the 2 years expired, I canceled that permit. And they fully understood it. They weren't happy, but they weren't upset at me at all.
Right. 2 years is a little different.
Dakota Plains also came in, I guess, just to.
Yep, Dakota
Right,
Plains
talk
came
to
in.
you.
They came in and said, well, I don't care if my conditional use expires, because the only reason I got one is because I had over 15 employees. I said, what does that mean? Nope, neither have I. So he wasn't sure why he had it, so Matt said, just let it go. I don't even want an extension, because I'll be more than a year away by the time I get all my other stuff to get on this ethanol plant. So he was okay. But no, the person I canceled was very aware of the law and what's going on, and he said, you had me according to that statute, or excuse me, that case out of Hanson County, you had me at 6 months, you had me at a year. So he walked away, and
But that was, as you explained that to us before, that wasn't a weather, that was anything but money. That was the market crash, and you decided not to bail the way you explained that.
in Hanson County, but the one that I canceled was just, I think they got distracted with another project or something. Forgot, I don't know.
The market crashed.
Yeah, it wasn't weather.
Yeah.
Nope.
And I'll give you this if you want a copy of it, that Hanson County.
Sure.
It was not weather, it
And
just was the process and what it,
And the county, isn't that where the county did issue an extension and then they got
Multiple.
sued?
They did.
And then the state said you can't do that.
The gist of it was the state came back and said, we don't care what the reason is, you can't do it. You just, so.
The precedence has been set on extensions, I think.
So sit down and anything else, and I know there's others that are here, so.
I think extensions are things that go outside of the ordinance when it's not clear, or a case-by-case basis, just like we hear every applicant come in here on a case-by-case basis, and not every two
Right,
are
but they
not.
have a variance process available to them. There is nothing in the ordinance that allows an extension.
Well, what I'm saying,
It's just
that's
not
what
there.
that's what I was gonna finish with, was that each one needs to be looked at case by case. One's weather, one's just because, another one might be whatever. Moose gave a couple of examples, death, divorce, there's always a reason, right? So, but there's no process in place in the ordinance to take care of that. So if you're gonna go outside the ordinance, and I still say the final say is the county commission, and they're the ones that need to make those decisions. Until we can recommend changing the ordinance based on some of these things, but I don't think we should start recommending.
But we cannot act, you can say, based off of how we interpret or read this ordinance, you have that authority or not, but regardless of what you or this commission says, the Board of Adjustment can't act outside of this.
Yeah.
Well, there's your answer.
And that's all this, that was the only intent of this.
So we're right back where we were 2 months ago when we said this is pretty cut and dry.
Well, but we never took a roll call vote. We all said, what do you think? Yeah, this is what we think. And so that's the thought, get an official
So you're asking for a motion
But we should probably.
to say that the ordinance as written does not allow for an extension. And therefore, we cannot grant an extension without, as the ordinance sits right now. That is what you're asking us for, is a motion, and then a second, and then a vote? Is that what you would prefer?
Get to do a motion, but do you want to, however you want, just whatever the motion is?
If they are requiring a motion to proceed, then I would like to make a motion.
Do we want any public comment on this?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Before we make any motions, would anyone like to speak on this issue? Please come forward and state your name for the record. Thank you.
My name is Kelly Kneifel. I'm a Yankton County resident. I've worked with the previous, Brian's predecessor, Pat, over 2 projects that we did out west of town. One was a CUP permit, one was a variance. One thing I think that is important to note here is that in terms of precedents in a common law system that we have here in the States, in terms of precedents, there was a lot of extension work that was being done. I've been on the receiving end of it myself in my projects, and it was very common, you know? And so that was a common thing that we did. And so in terms of precedents, we have to be careful there because, you know, you can say there's precedents and that the law doesn't allow it, but there is precedents that has been allowed over time. Now, I realize that times have changed, but that precedence exists. I forget there was one other thing I was going to say. If I think of it, I'll come back. Thank you.
Sir, did you come back to the, commit, or did you just go upstairs and he said you're extended, or did you go back to the zoning and planning board and the commission to get your extension?
As I recall from the conditional use permit that we had 2-3 years ago, Pat just gave it to us.
So that he just
He
upstairs just said.
he took care of it. He took care of it at that time. Correct.
Was there any paperwork or forms you filled out, or?
That was on your first big building.
First big building, correct. Not that I recall, but it's been a couple, 3 years ago.
Okay, thank you.
Tom Fadler also did quite a few of those as I first through the years before his predecessor, Tom Fadler, did the same thing. It was just right on the building permits.
That doesn't make it right.
But there's precedents. And we can't say precedence works this way, but it doesn't work that way. You got to look at both sets of precedents, in my opinion, in a common law environment.
You have to work within the law. If
Sure.
someone who is an employee violates the law, we can't use that as a precedent.
I understand that. The second thing is, and the point was made earlier about businesses being more prepared when they come to the commission to do that. And I don't disagree with that on a wholesale standpoint. I don't disagree with that, especially if you're a business and you know these rules and stuff. But as a person who's just someone who's wanting to build a barn in the country, okay, I don't have that experience and I don't have that background. So I come to Dennis or I come to Pat and get advice on what do I need to do, you know, help me through the process and get these things done. And that's been shaky. I mean, Dennis was very helpful here for me to get my last building permit because it was in that time frame when all this was going, all the changes were being made. But prior to then, it was real easy. Just do this, do X, Y, and Z, boom, boom. I came in. Hell, I didn't even have contractors lined up yet. I really didn't, you know. And so to be as prepared for just a common citizen who wants to do something out in the country where they live, it's not always as neat and tidy as they should have. All the I's dotted and their T's crossed, as was described earlier. I disagree with that.
You had a whole set of architectural drawings.
Yeah,
I was on
I
the
didn't.
board when I approved.
On the CUP, we absolutely did, but not on the barn I just got done doing. So, anyway.
Some of that fault goes to us too, because we wanna pass these things for people. So we find ourselves doing something like we did tonight with a plat that wasn't there, and, you know, we wanted the guy to have the business on the 5 acres, and we don't wanna hold up things on technicalities, but we tend to kinda make things looser and looser as we go, and at some point, they kinda get too loose. if you know what I
And
mean.
I applaud you for looking at the regulations and the zoning regulations and making them a little easier so that not so much stuff has to come here. I really applaud that effort. That is a positive thing in my eyes. But just as you're doing that, and just as you have in a conditional use and a variance process, you have some guidelines to give you some latitude there, and you have precedents that you've established in the past on what kinds of things you'll allow and which kinds of things you won't. You also have precedents that you can't run away from in terms of allowing extensions. You have that. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else want to speak? Come forward and state your name for the record, please.
Andrew Gunderson, Irene, South Dakota. Under South Dakota Codified Law 11-2-53-2, authorizes an appeal of specific cases such as a variance from the terms of the ordinance. It will not be contrary to the public interest if, owing to special conditions, a literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance will result in unnecessary hardship, and so the spirit of the ordinance is observed and substantial justice is done. That's what brought it up in the Hanson County case. They were going to vote on it and never did it. That's what they thought they had an extension for. I think it's page 8, 9, 10 of the memorandum decision where they talk about that. That's where I get that from. Where is this definition coming that walls have to be up to commence work?
It says that the construction has to begin. Construction means a structure. That's in the zoning ordinance.
Where is it at in the zoning ordinance?
The zoning ordinance, okay, continue. Dirt work is not considered construction.
I don't see the construction part either.
Brian read this when this first got brought up.
Actual construction in the definition section.
That's actual construction. That does not define when construction begins. That does not have a time frame in it. If I was going to use a football analogy, that actual construction defines football, a game thrown around, ball, whatever. But it doesn't define start, begin, commence.
Sure it does.
Where does it say in there start or begin?
Fixed building materials in a permanent position is when you start.
It doesn't say start in there, does it? Actual construction, but it doesn't define when it starts, right?
That's a permanent structure we're talking about.
That's just defining what construction is, right? That doesn't define when it starts.
That's fine, continuing.
Please, please.
I was just gonna say, just to set boundaries, if you don't mind, Madam Chairman, we discussed this earlier, and I think about a year or two ago that when you were as chair, we set the rules, but yeah, and I think, we don't probably have to stick to 3 minutes as long as it's equal time, but just for everyone on this commission, public comment is for public comment, not for, back and forth and discussion and whatnot, so.
Okay, I'll speed this up then. But actual construction start, there's 3 different terms used. Start, begin, commence. It's in federal law, it's in state law, and it essentially means dirt work. Moose kind of alluded to it saying engineering, stuff like that, that doesn't count. Surveys wouldn't count, but a dumpster being dropped off would. Dirt work would, construction materials being delivered would. That's in federal law. The IRS uses it, Department of Engineering uses it, HUD uses it, FHA uses it. It's in federal contract law. It's in South Dakota codified law for mechanics liens. The title companies use it, the insurance companies use it, and the banks use it in the construction loans. That's defining of when that construction starts, when materials are dropped off or anything visual is done, visual improvements are done to the property. That actual construction doesn't say start. That started construction language is used and defined elsewhere. Maybe not in your ordinance, but in South Dakota law and federal law. That's all I got.
Okay, anyone else want to speak?
My name is Josh Johnson from Ballin. I was one of the guys that went to Mr. McGinnis to ask about an extension, which I don't need anymore because I've started construction. There's concrete and there's lumber screwed together and dirt work is done and holes are dug. So,
Anyone else want to speak?
Louis Johnson, Ballin. I'm having a hard time with this because of the fact that normally we can start moving dirt in March, and this year we didn't start till basically the 1st of June and got stuck repeatedly. Now, we could start building our buildings in time, forget digging the pit, just pour the concrete on top of the ground and the mud and the water, build the walls and construction, and we'd be good to go. And then eventually, when it dries out, haul dirt around. I don't think there's anybody here that wants to put up a building that way. But we have to do a slipshod job in order to make zoning happy? This is an investment. This doesn't pay for itself overnight. And anybody that says Yankton County does not get income out of here, out of these buildings, is crazy. My insurance agent gets a check once a month. The bank gets a check once a month. We get a check once a month. The electric company gets a check. They get about 7,000, or actually said closer to 7,500 a month out of one building. And that's year round. And we're fighting them because, oh my God, we found a loophole and we can stop them and they're perfectly safe. And just for the people that don't know, everybody wants to have free range meat and pork and everything else because they're happy. 96 or 7% of the hogs in the world are raised in confinement. I don't think they're as dangerous as anybody thinks. I had a guy stop and deliver shop towels today, and I said, God, how bad is the hog stink? You're 200 feet away from 2,400 pigs, and he said, didn't know you had any. Why does this have to be a problem? Why are you forcing us to do a crummy job? I take pride in my dirt work. And I was very damn proud of my building when we got it done. Then the quality of life tied us up in court for, I don't know, 12, 14, 15 months. The judge ruled in our favor and we had to go back to court again because somebody didn't agree with that. All right, and the other thing is, why the hell should we get a permit? We got somebody that had a ton of violations and nobody said anything.
Anyone else want to speak?
Deb Oden said, and I just think if you'd look at 1725 and read what it says the building permit shall expire if the work described in any building permit, conditional use or variance has not begun within 180 days. Begun, it doesn't say be completed, it says begun. And then the building permit shall also expire if the work described in the building permit, conditional use or variance has not been completed within 2 years for the date of issuance. So all you should be talking about here is their beginning. I mean, beginning construction could mean a lot of things, but it doesn't say the building has to be complete. So if they begun construction within 180 days or within the letter of the law. And that's all I said.
Anyone else want to speak?
Kevin Huber. I heard Joe and I heard Mr. Harper. There's a few things. I believe what you said, each one needs to be considered separately. You said ducks in a row. I know some of these guys had their buildings ordered, the construction lined up, but we had 2 months with no roads. Now, if you don't have your financing done and all this, that's a different deal, but we have buildings. The only reason they weren't started was because of the weather. They had their financing, they had their contractor, they had their building. I think that has to be the consideration. Now, none of that work was done. I have no problem with, but when they had everything done, the county shut the roads down for 2 months for a good reason. I think that's the consideration that has to be done. I don't actually see that. The start of construction goes back to what you were saying. It isn't, some want to say a hole in the ground in concrete, but truly, if you have your building ordered, your contractor lined up, and your financing, construction in my mind has started.
Anyone else want to speak?
That is a very good point, and that's something that I did, as county officials, you and I, we shut those roads down. We made so no trucks could go. We all met, we all voted on them. So how does that work? I mean, I'm just a conversation, but we did shut those roads down, guys. I mean, we shut down school buses. No. We shut down all these. So how could those things transpire? I mean, it's just food for thought.
And then we've discussed that, and I mean, I agree, it's.
Let's finish public
Okay,
comment.
yes, we need to finish the public comment. Does anyone else want to speak?
Yes, my name is Sandy Williams, Marindal Township, and there's been a lot of discussion about, this is the way the ordinance reads, but I believe Yankton County, through the state of South Dakota, got federal disaster aid awarded because of the weather events that are happening, but yet I'm hearing discussion. It doesn't matter, we have to look at just this. This is what the ordinance reads. So are you negating the federal disaster aid that the county received?
We have nothing to do with that. We are glad that they finally awarded us.
But I think that's where the question of extensions comes in.
Anyone else want to speak? Okay, last call. All right, time for public input is now closed. What happens in the future is in the future. What we have to deal with is what the ordinance reads right now. And I agree, the weather was unprecedented this year, but that is no more my fault than it is their fault. We have to go by what the law says. And the state's attorney confirmed that. So I would like to make a motion that at this time, we recommend that we cannot offer an extension on a CUP as the ordinance reads right now, according to section 1725.
Is that just CUPs?
Oh, yeah, it says
Variances, what-
CUPs, building permits, and variances, right? Isn't that how the law, how it is in there?
Well, that section 1725 covers building permits, conditional uses, and variances.
CUPs, conditional uses, and variances, as it stands right now.
I'll second that motion.
So,
So yes.
so your motion. I just
My
wanna be
motion says that we cannot
clear. When you say
grant
we, the
this.
county commission? Because we don't grant anything.
No, we don't grant anything, but they want a recommendation.
So the motion is that we don't recommend
We don't
extending?
recommend any extensions as the ordinance is written right now, because it's not in there. There is no legal standing for it. That is my recommendation.
See, I don't think, I really still don't think that that's really, I'm not trying to skirt the issue. I think it's a valid issue that needs to be decided, and act of God or whatever. I'm not saying I'm taking away from anybody's hardship. But is that really what we're here to do? To tell the county commission whether they should?
They want a
go on
recommendation.
Well, I know they want.
They want a recommendation. They will
A lot of
decide
things
on their
too,
own.
but-
We're not making any decision.
Well-
We're just making a recommendation.
And Greg, I'll go back to like the drainage ordinance. We're clearly not following our own drainage ordinance. Our drainage board acknowledges that we are requiring applicants to go through more process and work than is required by our ordinance. And we had been doing that for years. We reviewed that, wanted to get back to how the ordinance actually reads. And we wanted to make the process easier for applicants. So we tasked the drainage board, the drainage commission, for a recommendation on that. Are we now interpreting this different? Are we looking at it different? Or them as the experts, have they been doing it the correct way? So everything they do is just like they're a mirror to the planning and zoning. It still comes up to the Board of Adjustment. But, so we task them with, okay, how are you interpreting this ordinance? How are you using it? And wrong, right, or indifferent, I still don't agree with how we're doing it, but we are respecting their decision, I guess, as a board, we have to this day. And so.
But is this was,
but it's
is this even, I don't see it as a,
And I don't, I don't.
It's clear cut in there. If you, even the state's
And
attorney
that's-
told you
and
guys
that-
that.
And that is the only thing I think that,
This is my issue with the whole thing. He told you that. Your state's attorney told you that.
Right.
And then he gave you another reason, maybe, I gotta look into it, let's wait 2 weeks, and you guys decide to send it here. For this discussion, that's done nothing more than kick this can down the road and cause all this turmoil. And you're gonna have to go back and make the same decision, but you want us, you wanna do it on our back. You wanna say, well, the planning board said. And I don't think that's right.
and that is not.
Because it's our own zoning administrator, temporary or not, acting zoning administrator told us what he thought
Right.
2 meetings ago about another issue, when the same issue with another applicant, another issue. We've talked about it. We talked about it.
And I agree, and I think if I
We've
remember.
already decided it, and now you want another recommendation on what, you guys can all read this.
I agree, and I agree, and it's frustrating. I think Dan made the motion to bring it here, and I believe his reasoning was we've discussed it at 1 or 2 meetings here, and there's never been an actual decision made, so just make the decision. And
Anytime somebody questions anything in here, we gotta have I mean, if it's, at what point do you say it's clear? It's clear. We have to have a number, we have to have 20 feet and we're at 21, and that's the only time it's clear?
Had it been
You
on
can't
the-
say it expires, you know, it expires in 180 days and now we're arguing whether it expires and there's no provision for an extension.
Had it
If
been
you
on
wanna
the
do that,
agenda last week and we would have been able to make that decision, I would have called that we make that decision last week, but because we could not,
right.
that
Here we are.
was the only reason. So.
The other part of that is, so that's the first part. The second part is, I'm not saying that, it's not, but it's my opinion, that an act of God or whatever the state's attorney, I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't think about that. You guys shouldn't think about that because that's not our decision.
And that's not what this commission is tasked with is, should we think about act of God, should we not, should we whatever. The task is simply.
Interpreting, you want us to interpret the ordinance whether an extension is allowed or not.
That is it.
And my motion says that an extension is not allowed based on the ordinance and based on the state's attorney interpretation of that ordinance, according to section 1725. And we had a motion and a second. Yeah, we call in the question. So we need a roll call vote, please.
So if you say yes, you're not,
Yes, we cannot extend it. It has to be a yes in favor of the motion. Okay, do you understand? Okay. I just want to make that clear. Yes.
A yes means we're saying to the county commission, you can't.
extend it.
You
You
cannot
can't
extend.
extend.
The ordinance does.
The
No, not-
ordinance does not allow us to
The
extend.
ordinance
Not that we can.
Well, that's what I want to make sure that it's.
The ordinance does not.
Brian, do you have that clearly written down as our?
Can we get a copy of that state's attorney's opinion, please? That's really important.
Well, that's the other question I have is
Is
whether.
that in writing?
You would have
The
to- you would have to
question's
ask
been
him
called, we
about-
got to vote.
Yes, please.
Spring,
Yes.
Hanson,
I'm going to abstain because I don't think it's our job. I don't think it's, I don't have the information I need to make that decision. I don't think it's right.
Harper,
Yes.
Healy,
Yes.
Flemish,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Williams,
No.
Welch,
No.
Michaels. Yes. Six yeses. 7 yeses.
6 yeses, one
wait.
abstain, and 2
One
noes.
abstain, yeah, I remarked it.
So to make it interesting.
I guess you down as abstain now. Good.
I'm learning to do, I like it. Okay. So, have we exhausted the agenda for tonight?
Yes.
Yes. So I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Yeah, I was agreeing.
The motion,
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?